if I'm living in the illusion that I'm not wanted, I might put myself out there and I'm putting myself on Tinder and I'm putting myself on dates, but I'm going to be constantly presented with circumstances that show me that I don't matter. So to attract the love of your life, you get to become the love of your life with yourself, which is so cliche, but the reason why it's cliche is because it's true.
It's just there's core beliefs. We have these core beliefs about who we are, right? So it's like, if I don't think I'm lovable, then I'm going to attract, like you said, I'm going to attract people that show me that I'm not lovable.
In relationships, that's what I like to say. It's not two people in a relationship, in a monogamous relationship. There's really four people in a relationship. There's me, my partner, my ego, and her ego. What I like to remind my clients is that if we try to chase money, sometimes we can get out of alignment. But if we get in alignment, abundance tends to flow. When someone wants a relationship, I get them to be okay without a relationship. So can someone go their whole entire life without their love of their life? Once they can get to that, then I believe that's true freedom, because they're okay with all possibilities.
What's up? Welcome to another episode. My name is Darko, and welcome to the Darko Show. And today's guest is Mr. Matt Cama. Matt is a relationship and business coach, and we're going to get into a lot of amazing things in this conversation because Matt's journey has been, so we're going to talk about where you were, what made you start out as an entrepreneur, and then you started out being a personal trainer, right?
Yeah.
And then you were in the health space for a few years. Then you made a transition into being a relationship coach, which is super fascinating for people. And it's kind of like a similar path that I'm on, because I'm at the start where I've been a health coach, right? And I'm really curious about this topic of relationship coaching. And you're also a business coach as well, and you're making lots of money, helping people make lots of money as well. And, in the last couple of years, you've made $1 million in your own coaching business. So that gives you qualifications, right? Because there's a lot of people that are coaches but don't actually have the embodiment of the practice, but you embody everything that you teach. You're in a loving relationship, and this is going to be mind-blown episode. So Matt, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, I'm excited that I'm here, and it took a while. We had some back and forth.
That's
but I'm
right.
glad that we got it hooked up, and yeah, I'm happy to be here with this amazing setup as well.
Yeah, thanks. So first of all, take us back, because I like to go back to your origin story. So what was the thoughts in your mind at the time that you wanted to go ahead and become an entrepreneur?
So it all kind of happened by accident, to be honest. I haven't actually told the whole entire story, but there was a time where I just finished high school and I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And there was one time I was in my kitchen and my mum just told me, she's like, why don't I sign you up for this personal training course? And because I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I was interested in health and fitness because I was playing rugby at the time, I just said, okay. And then that led to one thing, and that led to another thing, and then it was an accident that I became an entrepreneur. But I didn't even know what I thought that it was going to set me up to have a job, but I didn't realize that what we were learning was setting us up to have our own personal training business. So yeah, I kind of just fell into it, to be honest. And then after that, it was a really long journey of learning about what business is, how to run a business, how to run a business yourself, and that came with a lot of challenges. So that's how it started, and I had my business for about 5 years in person, and then 2 years as a personal trainer online as well. So I started when I was 18 years old. So it's been 11 years now of having my own business. So yeah.
And of course, you've grown a lot in that time. But so you started 2 years personal training in person, and then you transitioned online. So did you have a coach to help you go online, or how did you do that?
Yeah, I had a coach. That was also a big journey of learning about. Before transitioning online, I was hiring other coaches, going through different programs, learning about online marketing, and it was really one coach that helped me make a quantum leap with my income and my impact, and I'm super grateful for during that time. And that's why I think coaching is so important, because we all have blind spots, right? I have blind spots. I'm sure you have blind spots. Everyone has blind spots. And the great thing about having a coach is they can either show you the way through strategy, or they can provide objective feedback to show you what blind spots you have to help you to navigate where you want to go.
Absolutely. And what was the low point though, when in that transition period, like the 5 years that you were a personal trainer?
I would say one of the lowest points was when I left my personal training business. And the reason why is because I am a really big believer in following intuition, following my heart. And it got to a point where my heart was saying to leave my personal training business. The challenge was that I didn't know how to grow my business online. I didn't have a lot of money saved up. I had less than $1,000 when I left my personal training business. And my heart was just saying, take the leap. I know you don't know what's going to happen, and I know you don't know how it's going to happen, but just trust. So I ended up giving my clients 12-week notice, and I'm leaving at the end of the year, my personal training business. And the lowest point was just seeing my income go down, like my savings in my bank account go down and down and down and down and down. And it was really challenging. And the reason why was because there was just so much anxiety. I didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's coming back to that coach. It was that coach that really supported me to find out exactly what to do during those times to help my income and my business grow. So I would say it was just during that time. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to not knowing what's going to happen in the future, which is the very nature of life. But it was the projection of, I'm not going to be okay. Things aren't going to work out the way I wanted to. That I was projecting into the future, that was creating the anxiety in my body. So I would say it was during that time.
Yeah, because that's something I can relate to, actually. So actually, before I got you on here, I was like, wow, we have a similar story. Like, you're just further ahead on the path. Like, because I'm conscious, I'm so thinking about, like, I might be a relationship coach in the future.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't know about you. How do you feel about it? Because, okay, you stopped your health coaching business, right? Your personal training business, and then your income went down. But what was the catalyst for that? What was the decision that you made? Like, hey, I'm going to just stop doing this now. I'm going to go to do something else. What was that for you?
Personal training?
Yeah.
It was, I remember the exact moment. I was listening to myself speak to my clients on a Facebook Live, and I was speaking about macronutrients and how many calories you need and how many you need to reduce in order for you to lose body fat. And to me, I just found that it's awesome. Like, it can be really useful for people, obviously. And at the same time, I was like, it doesn't spark joy for me anymore. Just helping people with that. What I really loved, and I do the same thing now, which is why you asked, do you want me to say you're a business coach and a relationship coach? And I say yes because it's easier for people to understand what it is that I do. But I would say that even when I was a personal trainer and what I'm doing now, it's the same thing. And what I mean by that is, when I was a personal trainer, I used to tell people that I'm helping you transform the way that you see. Because by transforming the way that you see, it's going to transform the way that you look. Because you can transform the way that you look, but if you don't transform the way that you see, you're still not going to feel happy with what you're looking at in the mirror. And even with what I'm doing now, I am a relationship coach, but what I'm really doing is I'm helping someone to shift, and by shifting them, I shift the relationship. Or by shifting the individual, I shifted the way that they're relating to the person that they're dating, if they're not in a relationship. So that's what sparks joy for me the most. Same thing in business. There's not so much a business problem, there's more of a personal challenge that is creating the business problem. So I love focusing on strategy, but it's probably 10% of what it is that I'm actually doing, So I don't know if that answered the question, but that's...
Yeah, so how they see. So that's interesting. So what I'm hearing when you say that is, it's just mindset. It's the emotions that are the emotional blocks that they have, or the fears, all that stuff is affecting their outer results, right?
Absolutely.
So you're more concerned with that as opposed to, here's your macros. Yeah,
exactly. And it's the mindset, and also it's the somatic side of things as well, because both are, I believe, they're linked. So what's going on in someone's body affects what's going on in their mind, but what's going on in their mind affects what's going on in their body. And as you mentioned, it does produce the results in the external world. And that's what really shifted for me. Like, I was, when I was single, for some reason, I tended to attract and be attracted to people who are unavailable, or would create a relationship that wasn't the healthiest. And when I started to put the attention and intention into what's going on within me, in my body, what's going on in my mind, then I started to attract people who were completely different because of the emotional frequency, of the energetic frequency that I was now on. So I believe that it is the most important part of life. When we want to shift some area of our life, I believe that that's 80% of it.
The mindset side.
The mindset and somatic side of things. Yeah.
So what is somatic? Because people, you used that word, but I'm sure a lot of people don't know what that is. Because I know what that is, only because I'm in Bali.
Yes. Well, the words, if you think of the word soma means body. And when we are going through life, there's an accumulation of stored emotions that can be trapped in the body through life challenges, through what we saw, what we heard, what we experienced growing up. So emotion can get stored in the body. Emotion does get stored in the body. So when there's been things that happened at 7 years old, or when we went through that breakup at 16 or 21 or whoever old you are, and that hasn't been dealt with, that's stored in the body. So when I'm helping a client, like I can help them to be in, to get to acceptance with what happened in the past. And at the same time, there might be some stored anger that's in the body because of they didn't allow themselves to fully experience the emotion of anger or resentment. They tried to bypass that emotion and go straight into positive thinking, right? And that can happen a lot in Bali as well. It's like, I'm happy, love, and light all the time, but you're feeling angry. So allow yourself to fully feel it. So a big part of the work is being in complete acceptance with any emotion that shows up. Anger, especially the emotions that are labeled bad or wrong or feel uncomfortable. So that's a big part of my work as well. It's like, can we allow ourselves to fully experience all emotions regardless of how they feel, especially the heavy ones? So, yes.
Yeah, feeling all the emotions, that's scary for people because it's like, we judge, well, I'll speak for myself. Like, I've judged anger. I didn't know I had an issue with anger until I came to Bali. And my friend was like, why? Like, he was purposely getting angry in front of me. And he's like, how do you feel right now? And I was like, I feel extremely uncomfortable. I want to punch you in the face.
Yes.
I don't know how to react to that emotion.
Yes.
Like, I just judge it as bad because back growing up, my father, when he was angry at my mom, I was just like, I just wanted to be the peacemaker. So I'm always that guy. Well, I always have been. I've been the peacemaker. Whenever I see a fight going down at school or whatever, I'm like, hey guys, stop. This is bad. Like, I don't like to see the expression of anger.
Yes.
And how that shows up in my relationships is I just shut down, like, when there's anger present. And so for someone who, like, you've coached like 10,000 people or more, right? Yes. Over the years. And so what is the thing that you see with anger with people? Like, what's the issue that they have with it and how have you helped? Can you give us an example of how you've helped someone overcome this?
Yeah. So
or yourself?
What I would say is that a lot of people, for the people who say that they don't get angry, they're the people who tend to be the most angry, right? And it just looks different on the surface than most people. So, for example, in the past, I used to say that I wasn't a angry person. However, it would come across in sarcasm or passive aggressiveness. So, for example, if someone is late and we had a commitment to show up at this time, and then there is an accumulation of them continuing to not show up at that time, passive aggressive or sarcasm might show up in, you're always on time. So that might look like they might be smiling and they might be making a joke, but underneath that is, fuck you. Like, you're not being your word, right? So that is a form of anger. They're just not allowing themselves to fully experience. So it does come out in ways that it doesn't look like anger, but it is, So what I would say is, for people who don't feel like they can fully express it, it can be really important to validate and be with the resistance towards that. So you mentioned, I was being the peacemaker, and for anyone who notices that pattern, there's going to be a resistance to that. So rather than fully going straight into the anger and allowing yourself to experience it, it can be useful if we start to validate the wall or the resistance towards the anger. So it might look like, when did this all first start? What is it that I saw, heard, or experienced growing up that created the resistance towards fully allowing myself to experience this anger? And when someone can sit and ask that question, it might take them to an event. It was like, oh, wait, yeah, I remember seeing my dad hit me, or my dad was hitting someone else, or my dad getting really angry, and I was really scared. So I learned that this isn't safe for me to feel this emotion here. So when that happens, and when we can allow ourselves to fully validate that and go, that makes sense. It makes sense why I have a hard time with experiencing anger, because of what I saw and what I heard or what I felt growing up. Then we can allow ourselves to be and experience the resistance. And by doing that, we can experience the anger. And with anger as well, anger can be, it not is, but anger can be a secondary emotion. So what I mean by that is when we look under the hood of anger, we're going to find hurt. When we look under the hood of anger, we're going to find sadness. Not all the time. Sometimes there's just anger there and there's no secondary emotion. The anger is a primary emotion, but a lot of the time there's hurt underneath that.
Yeah, so I've seen online people talk about like, oh, they're just like the angriest people. Some people in the comments are like, oh, it's just a hurt little boy.
Yes.
Acting out.
Yes.
And it's all because he wants to get attention, significance. He wants to feel significant, right? And so we're always meeting our human needs, right?
Yes.
And so what was your experience? What's your experience been with anger? Because I remember I saw a post of yours where you were actually releasing anger and you were hitting the pillow and screaming into the pillow, right? So that was a very vulnerable post and it was a very powerful post. I remember the comments on that. That was amazing, like the impact that had. And so what has your experience been with anger?
My experience I can definitely relate to what you were mentioning, like the peacemaker. I can resonate with that because that was my experience. My experience with anger was judging it as bad, wrong, and not safe. So when I would play rugby, for example, it would come out because I'd allow myself to like, oh, it's a rugby field, so now full permission, just let out the anger. However, it was a very healing process, like that post that you're mentioning. That's one of the processes that I teach my clients to somatically release and experience the anger that they're feeling. And it was a process. You know, I remember there was a time when I did that process for the first time. It was towards a person when I was in high school where I was bullied. And I was like, oh, I'm over that. Like, you know, I'm done, which is why the somatic process is really important as well, because there might be people listening right now where they have an ex-partner, or maybe they feel like they're in acceptance with what happened, how their parents raised them or their caregivers raised them, or there's someone in their past where they feel at peace with it, but the body remembers. So back when I did that process for the first time, in my mind, I'm like, I don't really have any anger, but when I allowed myself to just first start hitting the pillow, I was like, holy shit, there is so much in my body that has been stored that I didn't even know that was there. And now it may look like my relationship to anger now is the same relationship that I have towards happiness or joy. There's anger there. It's not bad, it's not wrong, it's just energy moving through my body. So outside of any label of bad or wrong, how would I approach this emotion or energy in my body? The same way towards happiness or joy. So it was a very avoidant relationship in the past towards anger. Now I just meet it with acceptance and just pure acceptance.
You said something interesting there. So you said that it gets stored in the body, right?
Yeah.
So even if we consciously think that, oh yeah, that's fine, yeah, I accept that happened, it's or whatever. Like even everyone who says that, so it sounds like we all need, I should say, somatic work, even though we consciously think we've resolved the past and we've accepted it. Is that accurate?
I wouldn't say need, I would say it would be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, so I feel like that's a slight little shift on language, but I do feel like it would be helpful. I feel like if there's no need there, and at the same time, if someone is committed to having a certain relationship, it might be useful to do some somatic work. And Matt, how do I do that? So it could look like the next time that you get triggered by someone, which is inevitably going to happen, whether it be your partner, whether it be a friend, whether it be a caregiver, a family member, some circumstance that shows up, and there's something that arises in the body, whether it be anger, hurt, any emotion that maybe in the past you would have bypassed, you would have skipped, you would have not allowed yourself to experience. Like, what would it look like if you sit down for a second and just face it? There's the 3 F's that I like to mention, like face it, feel it, free it.
I like that.
Yeah. If we allow ourselves to fully face it, what that might look like is like, okay, I'm feeling anger. Let me just sit for a second. And if I allow myself to feel it, which is, okay, there's energy here. Don't place any judgment on it. What's just allow myself to feel it. And then if we do that, what tends to happen is the emotion that we're feeling tends to be freed. So I think that might be really useful.
As you're saying that, I'm thinking, well, that's what that brings up for me as you say that is, well, if I'm angry and I'm experiencing the anger, I think consciously I'm thinking about how the other person is feeling. Therefore, I'm not gonna feel the anger as much as I should, because it might affect the other person, you know. So I don't want to experience the full range of emotion.
Yep.
Because I'm caring about how someone else feels.
Yes.
that's the inner dialogue that's going on, you know.
That makes sense. Yeah. Was there a certain event that happened recently? Is you talking about?
Not recently, but just in my life experiences, right? So I remember when I was a naughty kid in my house, like my dad would discipline me with the slipper. So he like spanked me in my butt, and I remember being really scared. Like, to your point, what you said earlier, as you said that, I was like, oh, that's exactly the experience that I had, which explains why my relationship with anger is the way it is, which is okay. You know, I'm not blaming my father. That's what he did. That's how he knew how to deal with me when I was a kid. But, you know, now I can understand where it comes from and then work to heal that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and in relationships, I'll give you an example. There's been times when me and my partner, Kelley, where there might be anger in my body. So this is where it can be useful to be responsible and be like, it wouldn't be effective for me to project my anger onto her. So it might look like, hey, right now it's hard for me to be loving, and I would love 10 minutes to just be by myself to come back to this conversation. And then after that, I might go in my room, scream into a pillow, allow myself to fully experience the anger. There was a moment last year where that happened, and I allowed myself to just fully feel, scream, and then we came back into the conversation, and it took us about 90 minutes to try to work through it, but we couldn't work through it because Einstein, you can't solve a problem from the level of consciousness that created the problem. So once I started to release, honor the emotion that was there, which was purely anger, came back to it, 5 minutes, the situation was handled. So context matters. So that could be useful if that ever does happen with a friend. Okay, well, maybe right now I'm noticing myself wanting to just yell or try to be right here. So what I really need right now is time to just be by myself to come back to this. You know,
that's a very healthy strategy
Yes.
to implement. Because going back to all of my altercations in the past, I've never done that. Mostly because I'd never had the tools, right? So I never knew that. What you just said, I never even knew that was possible. Like, you can do that?
Yeah.
You know, because in the moment, your emotion's so heightened that for me, it makes me want to just stay in it and be right. So that triggers the I want to be right story. And then I just want to stay in it just so I can be right. And then it obviously escalates out of control.
Yes.
And so, yeah, it's just taking a step back and being by yourself. That's a very helpful tip, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would even, to add on to that, I wouldn't say that it's you. I would say that it's the ego. You know, you mentioned that it's I want to be this, I want to do that.
Right.
And what I've really realized is that that's not actually me. My soul doesn't want to be right. My soul doesn't care about being right. My ego thrives on being right. My ego survives on being right. So when my ego notices that there is a tendency to use a quote unquote weapon to be right in this situation, it's seeing, noticing, loving that part of me that wants to be right, and then coming back into the essence of who I am. And then, because that in relationships, that's what I like to say. It's not two people in a relationship, in a monogamous relationship. There's really 4 people in a relationship. There's me, my partner, my ego, and her ego. So, right? So a lot of the time when there's conflict, it's not actually me and my partner, Kelley. It's my ego and her ego, and then that's when there's actually conflicts. So that can be useful to remember.
That's interesting. I never thought of that either. Yeah, it's like the egos are battling. Both people want to be right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Huh. Okay, so we're going to touch on more of the relationships in a bit. I just want to go back into the identity, because this is something that came up as you're talking, is when you made that transition from being a personal trainer, did you know what the next step was for you?
Absolutely not. Yeah, absolutely not.
Okay, so you just knew that you didn't want to continue, because I'm speaking to a lot of people right now, because I've been in this place this year also, where, you know, the work that I was doing was not really inspiring me that much, right? So that's where you were, I'm guessing. And then you thought, okay, I'm going to stop this. But you stopped without any future plans. So that takes a lot of courage and faith.
Yes.
So how did you get around that? Like, because usually people stop because they have something else to go to.
Yes.
But you didn't. So how did you handle that?
Well, it's actually interesting. I just saw there's a book here by Kyle Cease. Shout out to Kyle Cease.
Yeah.
You know, it's someone who has helped me in so many areas of my life. And one of the metaphors that he gives is it's kind of like a GPS, right? Like when I put in Google Maps here, when you sent me the link, it didn't show me every single turn to take and didn't overwhelm me with all the different steps. It just gave me one step. Just go for 300 meters, keep going straight. And then once I went to the very end of the road, then it showed me the next step. I turned left, kept going straight, and then once I got to the end of the road, then it showed me the next step. And that's kind of what our heart does. It doesn't say, this is how everything is going to work out. Do this, this, and this, and this, and this. That's the mind. And that can be really useful. It's a really useful tool. But for me, it was like, just leave. I don't know what's going to happen, but just leave. And then once I took that step and just left, then it revealed the next step. And then it revealed the next step. And then the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step. So that's how I started to navigate my life. It's how I love to navigate my life right now, you know. So next year I'm moving away from business coaching a lot more, and it doesn't make absolute sense. My mind is like, there is a guaranteed amount of a lot of income that I get from that. But stepping away from that, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that it feels in alignment. And what I like to remind my clients is that if we try to chase money, sometimes we can get out of alignment. But if we get in alignment, abundance tends to flow. So that, I believe, is the highest priority. And if we can just listen to one step at a time, the next step, the next step, the next step will come. So,
yeah, I like that, the next step. But how do you get into alignment? So that's the next thing. And are you basing your decisions based on how you feel, or how does that work exactly?
Well, it's a really interesting question. So it's not about how do we get in alignment. I believe that that's our essence. It's who we already are. We are in alignment. There are just perceptions and pain and things that are constantly taking us out of it. So it's not about how do we get in alignment, but what are the things, perceptions, emotions that are taking us out of it. So it's a different approach. That's who we are. Why are we going out of it? So it might look like a self-perception. What I came back to before, it's like a lot of the time I'm transforming the way that someone sees. And by transforming the way that they see, they come back to their core essence, which is alignment, which is love. So the how of that can be tricky if you're doing this by yourself. It can absolutely work, but that's the power of getting a coach. Someone who knows how to listen and can really hear, right now you're living in an illusion that you're a bad person. Right now you're living in an illusion that you're projecting into the future that things aren't going to work out. There's an infinite amount of potentials that exist in the future. And out of all of the infinite possibilities, the ego is thinking of one thing, where you end up broke, where you end up alone, where you end up things not working out the way that you want it. And then it's about questioning that. Is that absolute truth? Of course not, because it hasn't happened yet. It's a projection of the future. Is it absolutely true that I'm not enough, that I'm a bad person? Of course not. Where am I going to find that? So by removing those illusions, by noticing the lie, the truth will naturally emerge, which is alignment.
Yeah, just removing it. I can see how that works, because we are love. Everyone,
Yes.
we all are love.
Yes.
But there's things that just block that, and then we get confused and go on different paths.
Yes.
And then we just veer off and drift. Like, I actually explained to my friend earlier this year, I said, earlier this year I felt like I was drifting. I said, I feel like I'm on a life raft in the ocean. I'm just like drifting.
Yes, yes.
And I need to do things to come back to alignment, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's kind of like abs, right? It's like, how do I get abs? You already have abs, right?
Right.
Well, I do have abs, but there's just some body fat that's in the way.
Right.
Like yours clearly are there, right? But we already have abs, so it's not about trying to get it. It's about removing the body fat that is not allowing it to be fully revealed. Same thing with alignment.
Yeah, and so with the identity, that's what I wanted to touch on, because So I've wrapped my identity. I realized this year. Like I've seriously wrapped my identity in what I do, and it's actually hurting me. Like my friend actually said, he said, "Why don't you just get fat? Just get fat." And I was like, that was the worst thing ever, the worst idea ever in my mind. I'm like, no, I'm not going to get fat because my identity is this, you know. And so I'm the health guy. So as long as I'm the health guy, it's going to be hard to move out of that. So to do what you did, you had to relinquish that identity, you know, let go of it. And so that process of letting go is really hard for people. So how did you process that? How did you just let go and be like, you know, I've done this for 5 years, I'm done with it now?
Yes. Yeah. So I didn't have the awareness back then, but I will share, like back then it was really hard. There was a quote unquote battle. But from my awareness now, so for example, the word health coach, was it health coach that will struggle? So that exists in words, in language. So once we realize that what we're really trying to remove is just words, that's really what the battle is. It's like my ego is created a lot of the time, it's wrapped up in words. So what can be really useful is just questioning, out of everything that I am, is it true that I am a health coach? No. Right. So a lot of the time it can be really useful to just question, because one of the tools that I love to teach my clients is to doubt themselves, which sounds really weird to some people. Like, what, you want me to doubt myself? And I'm like, yes. And then I teach them how self-doubt actually is created. And self-doubt is created through the form of questions. So when I ask myself a question enough times, I'm going to start to doubt myself. And when we can redirect doubt and use self-doubt to doubt the self that was created, that is the illusion. So what I mean by that is, okay, I have an identity that is, I'm a relationship coach. I'm not actually a relationship coach, but it is useful to say that to people, so then that way they can easily identify within seconds that this is what Matt does. But it's not an absolute truth that who I am is a relationship coach, right? I'm a soul I'm a soul, but I am languaging myself as a relationship coach just because it's useful. So I feel that can be really helpful, reminding people that to doubt the self that is wrapped up in the illusion, you know, through the form of questions.
Yeah, because when you start questioning it, the doubt gets introduced. Like, for example, if I'm going to do jiu-jitsu and I'm questioning if I can beat that guy.
Yes.
Then doubt is already there, and I've already lost. You know, so like all the fighters say this. Like you box, right?
Yeah.
And you know that if you introduce any sort of questioning of your ability, that's when you start doubting yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. So I can see how that works. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that can be really helpful.
Yeah. So, okay, cool. So people can learn from that and how to just start, you know, letting go of their identity in a healthy way.
Yes.
By questioning.
Yes.
Yeah. And realizing that that's not who they are. Because it's so easy to attach what you do with who you are. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. It's like, oh, I have to be this way to succeed in business.
Yes.
You know, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's absolutely not true. There are no rules. Like, what would happen if and great question to ask, like, what would I do? What would I be? How would I create? What would I feel if there were no rules? If I could just live life however it is that I want to, and be whoever I want to, and talk about whatever I want to, what would I create if there were absolutely no rules? And I feel like that can be useful for someone to tap into the essence of being unlimited, you know?
Yeah. And that's something I've done. I've just started talking about a lot of the topics that I like to talk about, just to express myself, and you know, it's been nice.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been good. So let's switch gears. So let's talk about relationships, because I know that's a topic that you coach clients on, and you have a lot of courses on this stuff, and you have a wealth of knowledge. And your branding is you help single people, right? That's one of the things you do. You help couples too.
Yeah.
But you also help single people find love, attract their dream partner. So this is such an interesting topic for me, because before I came to Bali, I didn't know that there were any relationship coaches existing on this planet. You know, and I wasn't aware of how we tend to attract the same partner with a different face and a different name, but the same stuff happens in our relationships, and there's a pattern. So why does that happen, first of all?
Great question. So from the energetic perspective, if I'm living in the paradigm that I'm unlovable, if I'm living in the paradigm of I'm not wanted or I don't matter, there is a certain vibrational frequency that I'm emitting out. So if I have a radio and I change the radio to, let's say, rock FM, the radio has no choice but to play rock. If the radio changes to hip hop FM, the radio has no choice but to play hip hop. If I change my energetic emotional frequency to I don't matter, I'm not lovable, I'm not wanted, I'm bad, I'm wrong, then life has no choice but to present people that match that vibration, that frequency. So from an energetic perspective, that's a big reason why that happens. And I noticed that for myself a lot of the time. That was the perspective that I was living in, which was an illusion. And life had no choice but to match that. And what happens when I'm coaching a client is, and when I worked on with myself, once I dissolved that idea about myself, that perception of myself, you use the word relinquish, which I really love, right? When I relinquish that illusion of myself and start to get into the core essence of who I am, then life will start to present different people to me. And who I'm attracting and who I'm attracted to is going to be completely different, right? If I'm living in the illusion of I don't matter, then I'm going to attract partners that show me that I don't matter. If I'm living in the illusion that I'm not wanted, I might put myself out there and I'm putting myself on Tinder and I'm putting myself on dates, but I'm going to be constantly presented with circumstances that show me that I don't matter, right? So that's really what I'm helping people to do. Once I help people, that the way that I help people to attract their partner is by getting into the feeling of that future version of them that has a relationship that they want. You know, so to attract the love of your life, you get to become the love of your life with yourself, which is so cliche, but the reason why it's cliche is because it's true, right? So does that make sense?
Yeah. It's like you're just letting go of that illusion.
Yes.
But what it sounds like to me is it's just there's core beliefs. We have these core beliefs about who we are, right? So it's like, if I don't think I'm lovable, then I'm going to attract, like you said, I'm going to attract people that show me that I'm not lovable.
Yes.
But that could be my whole entire existence on this planet if I don't get that awareness that I have that belief. So you're also helping people get the awareness on, hey, through questioning, I'm guessing, right?
Yes.
You just show them, hey, like, oh, fuck, yeah, all my life I've believed that I'm unlovable. And then I can see how that gives people aha moments, and now they're more open to doing the work, because of course first step is awareness, right?
Absolutely.
And then you have to go into, okay, now you're aware of this belief that's been affecting everything in your life. Now we can work to change that. And what's the process to change that?
Great question. And a useful question I would love to share with people as well, to first become aware of it and then to change it. To become aware of it, a great question you can ask is, how must I be perceiving myself in order for me to behave this way? So for example, if a client is constantly staying with someone when they know that they're not for them, they're not in alignment, they're not compatible, how must I be viewing myself in order for me to be in this situation, to stay in this situation? Oh, wow, I must be, I have a projection of the future that I'm not going to find anyone else, which means that maybe I do see myself as someone who is unlovable or someone that is unworthy. And then they can start to really identify what is the thing that they get to change or shift or relinquish. And that can be really useful. So that's step one, becoming aware of what's actually there. And then once we become aware of what's there, then there's the shift, the relinquishing, the changing. So it's more about deprogramming rather than like changing or reprogramming. So that's the way that I like to help clients, is not change their beliefs. It's more so relinquishing in the first place, right?
Right.
So again, coming back into questions. So just constantly, and it's a process. It's not like an overnight thing. You can't. It can be useful to be like, oh yeah, is it true that I am unlovable? Is it true that I'm unworthy? And by spoiler alert, it's always going to be no, because you're not going to find it anywhere. But then it's about living in and being in the feeling of, how would someone who is lovable, how would someone who is worthy of love, how would they be? How would they think? How would they feel? How would they act in this situation? And then when we can get in the feeling of it, the essence of it, then it just become through practice. It can be the new normal if that's just how I operate, right? So I feel like that can be helpful. So for me, it's not about affirmations, but ask myself questions to be in the feeling of it. So for example, when I'm helping people to earn money, or right now I'm being in the question, someone who is a multi-millionaire, how will they be? How would they feel? How would they act? And then looking at where is my current way of being? Where is it not in alignment with a future version of me that I want to become or I want to be? Oh yeah, I have this habit here. I'm doing this thing. That's probably not useful. I have this thought. That's probably not useful. That's probably not the version of me that I'm stepping into. That isn't in alignment with that. So then you can start to notice the gap. And if you can relate to relationships or having the love of your life, for example, you can start to really notice the gap between where you are and the version of you that exists, the gap in between.
And then the work is bridging that gap, of course.
Bridging the gap, yes.
Which is where coaching is helpful.
Yes.
To help people, because it's scary. It's scary to go from where they are to where they want to be, because there's all these beliefs that come back. Like it's like it's like a blow up doll outside of a store. And it's just like. It's like this. Have you seen those ones?
Yeah.
And then when you tip it over, it comes back up, right?
Yes.
So it's these beliefs, they don't just stay down. They come back. So if we don't have any sort of coaching or accountability, we can stay stuck.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And it's scary to the ego specifically, because the ego has an intention to survive. So if that belief that the ego is wrapped up in falls away, so does the ego. So it's really the ego that's like constantly coming back up because it doesn't want to die. So I feel like, noticing it's a noticing game. It's a noticing game, but also not treating the ego like it's bad. Because really, to get even, how I mentioned that there's there's actually 4 people in a relationship, you and the ego, and then the other person's ego. There's actually probably hundreds or sometimes even thousands of versions of you for yourself, and then hundreds and thousands of versions of the other person. If we really want to get really deep here. Because there's maybe parts of me when I was 3 years old, 4 years old, 7 years old, that started to be birthed or splintered off. And now that version of me is coming up again in a future relationship. So sometimes when, for example, I get triggered in my relationship, it's actually my partner Kelley not speaking to me. It's actually Kelley speaking to the 12-year-old me. And then other times it might be the 3-year-old me. Or other times it might be the 24-year-old me where I got really scared one time. So that's when it can be useful to not treat the ego like it's bad or wrong, but how would you treat a little child who is scared, or a little child who feels that they're not pretty enough, good looking enough, not worthy of love? Would you be like, just change and try to change the belief? Or would you actually take the time to hug that part of you, to validate that part of you? Because sometimes it's just by loving and meeting that part of you that part of you has, then naturally it will shift, because now it doesn't feel like it's unsafe, or now it doesn't feel like it's bad,
So do you feel like a lot of us are just not giving love to our inner child, which
Absolutely.
is presenting a lot of the problems in relationships?
Yes. It's one of the biggest parts of my work is inner child work, and that can be one of the biggest processes to help someone to shift their relationship, is to shift the way that they're perceiving the younger version of them.
Yeah, because if I've had people do this to me in Bali, and like Emil done this to me. It's like, how would the 7-year-old Aaron feel about that? I'm like, oh God.
Yes.
Like, would you tell, if the 7-year-old Aaron was right here right now, would you treat him the way you're treating yourself right now?
Yes.
I'm like, no, I wouldn't. Like, I don't treat kids like that. I treat them with love. It's just all love. It's just fully accepting everything. And that's how we treat children. But we don't. Why don't we treat ourselves like that?
Why don't we treat ourselves like that? There's many different reasons. A lot of the time it can be we have internalized our parents, or our primary caregiver. So for example, if someone had a dad or a mother or a caregiver who, whenever that part of us came up, like for example, we cried, or what you were mentioning before, like you were a naughty boy, like you did something wrong and you were punished for that, then we can internalize the way that our parents were with that part of us. So now we become the dad to our little child. Does that make sense? So if I'm punished for crying, if there's emotion that comes up, I think that I'm the one saying, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. But really, I've just internalized my dad saying that. That's just an example. So that can be a big reason why, because we internalize our caregivers or a parent.
And then we punish ourselves.
We punish ourselves.
Right, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And so the process is just understanding that that's not our stuff.
Exactly.
We just
borrowed it. It's been spoon-fed on how to be with the younger versions of us.
And then just giving love to that version of ourselves.
Yes, and that's called reparenting.
Reparenting.
Reparenting, yes.
Got it. I'd never heard that before. Yeah. So yeah, there's so many different avenues we can go down, but the essence, the first question that brought us here was why do people attract a different partner with the same face?
Different name. Sometimes it's the same name as well. There's people that have actually no, it's the same name. Like, well, there you go, right? Clearly, there's some energetic work that we get to do here. Yes.
And it's familiar too, right? Like, for example, if I see a girl that looks similar to a girl that I used to date, I'd be like, oh, it's like she looks attractive, you know. But I know that it's going to be the same stuff that's going to happen. Well, not necessarily, but
maybe.
But it's I had a chat with my friend, and she had a therapist do EMDR with her. Yeah. And she was explaining to her how, like my friend, she did, but in the past, go for emotionally unavailable men. And it was all connected to her father and how he was emotionally unavailable when she was a child. But something in her nervous system actually is predisposed to want to be attracted to emotionally unavailable men. She just energetically senses it in men. And that's a thing, right? Like you can energetically sense that familiarity in someone else.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And a lot of the time when someone is attracting emotionally unavailable people, I question, is it because they are emotionally available? And like, no, I'm not emotionally available. So, so are you sharing that you really want to be with this person? No. Are you sharing your heart with this person? No. Well, so can you see how you are a match for emotionally unavailable people to come into your life if you're waiting for them to be emotionally available before you become emotionally available. So of course you're creating a relationship where there's emotionally available people being attracted to you because you are what you were attracting. So this is the power of having objective feedback through questions and someone to really see patterns, to see, okay, one of the reasons why that might be happening is because you might be emotionally unavailable yourself. So that can be a hit to the ego, but it's sometimes really useful to someone to see that pattern, you know.
Yeah, so going a bit vulnerable here. So as you say that, I just came back from Thailand, right? And I was with one of my first mentors, and we were talking about women and stuff, and I was talking about my dating life, and I was telling him about one experience I had with this lady, and all the issues I was having, and he said to me, "You're just not emotionally available," and I was like, what? No, I am. I'm emotionally available. Like, she's not. Right? It's her. Yes. And he's like, dude, no, you're not. Like, if you were, you wouldn't be having these issues. Like, she wouldn't be reacting in the way she's reacting because you're just not emotionally available. Like, you just don't have the energy to put into the relationship to really care and get to know her. I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. As you're saying that, it's true. Like, I don't have the energy. And I've just accepted that, okay, like, at this phase of my life, I'm accepting that I'm not emotionally available for that. Beautiful. But I want to be, and the ego can want to be right and push, but it's just not going to work.
Yeah, you know? Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that, man. Yeah. And also, when someone is emotionally available, they're also not a stand for when someone is emotionally unavailable for that to show up in their lives, meaning they're not going to tolerate it. Right. So once, and also, when someone is emotionally unavailable, it makes absolute sense if we can look back at their past history, like look back at your past history, we can look at, of course, someone will be emotionally unavailable for the things that have happened, and things that haven't been dealt with. That was the biggest part of my life. I remember there was a time where I was constantly attracting people who were either just out of a relationship or they were still hung up on their ex. And I was like, why does this keep happening? Like, it's not a one every now, it's every single time. When I'm dating someone, they either just got out of a relationship. And I looked at, when someone's just out of a relationship, what's a common pattern? What's commonly there? And a lot of the time, their heart is closed because of hurts. And I looked back at myself. Am I a match to that because I also have my heart closed? Of course, because there were so many experiences that happened in the past that I didn't allow myself to fully experience. So I closed myself off because I was actually really, really scared. I wasn't scared of love. I was scared of potentially getting hurt if I do open up. So when someone is noticing that they're emotionally unavailable, number one, always meet it with love and acceptance because it makes sense. And then number two, start to see that that part of you that is really emotionally unavailable is actually just scared. The unavailability is created out of a fear of getting hurt again. So once we can just meet that part with love, acceptance, and also having tools, like for example, with, you do jiu-jitsu and you're doing boxing and stuff like that, you probably feel way more confident being able to protect yourself. Is that accurate?
Yep.
Yeah. And the reason why is because you have competency. So in psychology, there is a competence-confidence loop. When someone feels more competent at something, naturally they feel more confident at something. So do you notice that? Like if there's any things that happen, like I'm good. If someone tries to, I'm good. I'm going to take them down.
Right.
I don't know all the jiu-jitsu moves, but like I will be able to protect myself.
Right.
So what if you can also apply that same thing to the somatic work? If I have all of these tools and I have a perception that no matter what, life is going to support me, I'm going to support me, I'm going to be okay. So if I open up my heart and this person cheats, this person does this, or this person doesn't want to be with me, I'm good. I'm going to allow myself to experience hurt. For sure, I'm going to feel sad. That's part of being human. And at the same time, I'm going to be okay. Then we're going to have that competency through tools to be able to know how to be with the emotions and perceptions of the future that no matter what, I'm going to be okay. Then we can start to feel more confident going, okay, here's my heart. Does that make sense?
That's literally probably the hardest thing for so many people to do.
Yes.
And I'd say myself included, actually.
Yes.
Because it's like a fear of intimacy, right? Because it's like intimacy, what I understand of intimacy is like into me you see. So it's like, really opening everything, just like, I'm just here I am, baby, like, yes. And it's the scariest idea for a lot of people. And I think there's a show actually on Netflix, it's called Too Hot to Handle. I'm not sure if you've seen it.
No.
But it's interesting because they're essentially like a bunch of like young women and young guys, and the guys are like macho, like super in shape, and they're putting on this mask, and then the whole show is it's actually kind of like people like you go on a show to coach them. It's interesting. So the whole show is based on, like, let's say you would go on a show and coach these people how to connect deeper and be more intimate and reveal more, open their heart more. And it's interesting to see the path of the guys, because the guys initially come in with their masks on, like, hey, I'm going to get this girl, that girl. And it's all about just instant, like, sex, really fast stuff. And then ultimately what happens is, as the show goes on, the guys like take down their mask and they reveal their insecurities, and it's all the core thing is fear of intimacy. I was hurt before, my heart's closed. Now I'm just gonna like get these girls, but I'm not gonna let them come too close. And you see that, I see that in like most men I meet is like playing this game, especially here in Canggu, for example, right? And it's the core of it is just a fear of intimacy, because if I open up, and then I might get hurt. And actually, you see these guys who come in with their masks on, and afterwards they're like crying because they've opened their heart, and now they're in love, like for the first time in their life with a woman. It's like they don't know how to deal with it. It's scary, but it's also beautiful at the same time. It's the ultimate vulnerability, right? Love is just to love is to be vulnerable, which is something that I think a lot of people don't understand. Could you speak to that vulnerability and love? Yeah,
well, if you think about, so there's two things I want to break down. Number one, a lot of the time it's not fear of intimacy. There's what you mentioned before, insecurities, which is normally judgment of some part of us that we've labeled bad, wrong, not okay, not going to be accepted. So the intimacy is just revealing the deeper aspects of us that we've been judging. So it's not intimacy, because you just mentioned, and I for sure agree with this, that love is what we all crave. So it's the revealing that intimacy gives that is mirroring back the aspects of us that we're truly judging. So for example, a personal example, in the past, I was let's say crying. Crying was something that I used to judge myself for. So I rarely gave myself permission to cry in front of another woman, and men for sure, but especially another woman, because I was judging myself that I'm not a man, and I'm sure a lot of men can agree with this or relate to this, that I'm not a man if I cry. So being in front of someone and the intimacy was just revealing and mirroring back the aspects of me that I'm not okay with displaying and feeling a certain emotion. So that's the first part. And at the same time, intimacy and vulnerability or transparency, it's connected. So if I want deep intimacy in a relationship, then it's going to be really hard for me to have that if I'm not being transparent about everything. Like whatever that show was, sounds like a really good show.
Yeah.
But it's going to be hard for me to feel that and create that in the relationship if I'm not being transparent about those things that I'm judging myself for. Because instantly someone can connect you on a deeper level once they say, here's all of me. I've judged myself for this. I've done this thing in the past where I feel really guilty and shame about. I don't feel like a man here. These are the things that I still be with and I'm judging myself for, and I don't know how to deal with it right now. And I'm doing my best, but I just don't know how to get rid of it. Don't know how to get through this habit. I struggle with this. Instantly someone's like, I feel you now, you know? So if someone wants intimacy, can they have the courage to be transparent about the things that they're judging themselves for? That's a big part of creating it.
Yeah, that self-judgment, that's something I've been going into recently a lot more, is realizing how much I judge myself and how much we all judge ourselves. And that's really what is happening, is projection of that judgment onto others.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
And the ability to just be honest with ourselves as well, like be honest with myself. That's hard. Why is it so hard for me to be honest with myself, or people to be honest with themselves?
About which parts? The parts that they're judging?
Yeah, just about the truth. Like, because everyone, I speak for myself, so I've liked to complain about my partners in the past, or to my friends, you know, stuff that's going on. But of course, they weren't coaches, they weren't aware of the patterns. But now that I'm looking back at it, it was just there was a fear there that I was just avoiding. It's easier to complain than it is to actually confront the fear that is controlling the situation, that you're allowing to control the situation.
Gotcha.
Right? So I was just not being honest with myself because I was just avoiding. I was avoiding the truth.
Yes.
So I guess that's my question.
Yeah, it will stem back to changing, you know, or shifting. Because if I lie, and this may be, for a lot of people, it's happening on an unconscious level. They're not actually aware that they're doing this. But when someone's not being honest with themselves, it's because it's easier than actually being honest with themselves and then feeling the uncomfortable emotions that come with that, or the lifestyle changes that come with that, or the other shifts that come with actually fully owning that I have a challenge here, or I'm judging myself here, or I have a pattern of this. It's easier, well, not easier, but on the surface level, it can be easier to not deal with it. Or it can be scary to the ego to deal with it. Because again, the ego, or the younger version of us, may have some needs being met through holding on to a challenge. So in psychology, that's actually called secondary gain. Secondary gain is when I'm holding on to something because I'm having some type of need met. So if someone, or a 14-year-old part of us is continuously not opening up the heart, it's because there's a need that's being met. And the need that's being met is that there is safety in that. However, when we can notice that part, then we can start to bring that part of us, that aspect of us needs into consideration when we are moving into a relationship. Okay, there's a 13-year-old me who feels unsafe to open up. Okay, what is that? What needs does that part of me have? How can I meet that part of me's needs? You know, so went on a little bit of a tangent there, but hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it's that feeling safe, right? What we associate with feeling safe.
Yes.
So feeling safe could be, I'm just going to keep you here. I'm not going to let you come closer because this is safe to me.
Yes.
If you come closer, that's not safe. I'm now not safe, so I ain't going to do that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And so yeah, the work again. So here in Bali, I meet so many women who they say to me, "I wish I could meet a guy who's doing the work." Because most of these guys, they're not doing the work. You know, I explain how I feel about certain things, and you know the self judgments that I have, and it just scares the guys away because they can't deal with it. So this is a complaint I hear from so many women. Like, you know, they're like, and I feel for them because you know I've been doing my own work on my stuff, and I've grown so much in the last few years being in Bali, and you know just being able to have this conversation is a testament to my personal growth. Like. The stuff that we're talking about here, the guy Aaron 4 years ago, like, what the hell are you talking about, mate? You know?
Yes.
So it's just hard I think, for a lot of guys to open up and do this work because, you know, I see it. So there's so many women. I mean, you're a coach. You've helped women. What's your take on this? Because the guys out there, you coach a lot of women, and I'm sure they complain about guys all the time. So what do you think are the biggest problems that men are having in this day and age with regards to relationships and their inner work?
That's a great question. So I'm going to come back to that question. What I will also say for women who are experiencing that, because I've worked with so many women at this point on that specific topic, it's one of the biggest things that tends to arise. And this is not I'm going to speak general here, but I know that probably 80% of women are probably going to be able to relate to this. A lot of the time, when that happens and they're attracting someone who they're just not doing the work, what tends to happen is they're in a relationship and there's a behavior of trying to fix the person to become more self-aware. Or they're trying to fix the person because they want them to get into personal development. And time again, the pattern is that they're perceiving the person that they're dating as there's something wrong with who it is that they are. And if, again, coming back into childhood, that's usually because the way that they grew up, there was a pattern of their mom, their dad perceiving them as there's something wrong with how they are, and rather than loving them for where they're at, love was inconsistent. It's like, I love you when you do this, but not when you do that. I love you when you do this, but not when you do that. When you do this, attention, love, significance is taken away. But when you are being the projection of how I want you to be, then I'm going to love you. So then that starts to show up in relationships. People aren't doing the work. People aren't where I'm at. They're not as self-aware as me. I'm like, well, you're not as aware as you think if you're thinking that they're not as self-aware than you, right? There's this hierarchy of I'm up here and all the men that I date is down here.
Yeah.
So when they can start to love anyone regardless of where they're at, and doesn't mean that they don't have to choose them as a partner. But when we can start to see that regardless of how someone is, that they are the way that they are, and there's zero judgment there, then they will start to notice that people that they're attracting or who they're attracted to is going to be completely different. They're not going to be in a relationship to try to fix someone because there's no longer a perspective that there's something wrong with them, right? Yeah. And then there's a lot more compassion and empathy for where they're at. Now, coming back to where the men are, the question is, what's the biggest challenge that men face today in relationships? Yes. Some of the biggest challenges are the conditioning around emotions and the conditioning around what it means to be a man. I just had a call with a group of men about this, and Kelley and I, my partner and I, have a program for couples, and we had a call with all of the men in there. And one of the things that I spoke about is, what does it mean to be a man? And what are the biggest challenges that men face today in relationships, very thing that we're speaking about. And a lot of the time, there's deep shame for things that they feel like is not manly. And one of the biggest parts is emotions. Some of the other ones are desires or habits that they have behind the scenes that they have deep shame about. And when there's shame in the body, then that will start to spill out into the relationship, whether it be with intimacy, whether it be with not being completely intimate and open, because I don't want someone else to know about this thing that I'm hiding. So that can affect the relationship, or it can affect and impact if they get in a relationship in the first place. Because if there's deep shame about who I am or what I'm doing, I can't let anyone know about this. So fuck intimacy. I'm going to be by myself because I don't want anyone to know about this. So there's a lot of shame with a lot of men from what I've worked with. And the biggest part is emotions. So as men, we get taught that you're not a man if you cry, right? There's so many words or things that we saw, things that we experienced, maybe from our dad as well, that when we feel an emotion, we're not loved. Or when we feel an emotion, that we're not a man. But that's part of being human. The biggest part of being human is the emotional experience of life. So if we're allowing ourselves to feel one emotion, but judging ourselves for this whole spectrum of emotions, sadness, anger, jealousy, shame, guilt, then that will affect our relationship with another person. And one of the things that I constantly come back to is the relationship with ourselves will affect every other relationship in our life. And that just isn't with people. It's also with our creativity. It's also with our business. It's also with our with children. There's a relationship with everything. So when we can shift our relationship with ourselves, emotions, perspective of ourselves, everything else shifts in our life. So that's one of the biggest things that I see.
Yeah. Wow. So that's literally what you're doing then. It's you're helping people improve the relationship with themselves to help them relate to others in a healthier way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the shame that men feel, like I can relate to shame. Like shame is huge. Well, I mean, Brené Brown talks about it. We have some books on Brené Brown.
Yes.
But I mean, shame is just, it's such a huge thing that I think even when, I don't know about you, but even when men are together and we're like friends, we're talking, we don't really reveal the stuff that we're shameful about unless we go to like a men's circle, right? And most men don't go to men's circles because of the judgments.
Yes, yeah.
And it's like, there's all this emotional, it's all the judgments about the thing. It's like not masculine to go to a men's circle and just talk about your problems because men are naturally just solvers, right? Problem solvers. So I'm just going to talk about my problems. If not, no one's going to solve them. You know? So it's like all this in a dialogue going on.
Yeah.
So the shame is, I mean, what do you think is, how can we release the shame?
Great question. Yeah. One of the things that I like to help my clients with is giving them metaphors. And I like to say that there is something called shamezilla, right? Shamezilla. So
Shamezilla,
Godzilla,
okay.
shamezilla.
Yeah.
So shamezilla, think of it as this little Godzilla, but it's shamezilla. And its food, it grows with darkness. That's its food. If it's kept in the dark, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And darkness tends to dissolve with the what? Yeah, with light, right? So once we bring it into the light through men's circle or a professional or a partner, or we even just speak it out loud if we don't have someone there, then by bringing it into the light, the thing that is kept in the dark, shamezilla, will tend to dissolve. So I think that the biggest ways to change that or dissolve shame is by bringing it into the light, by speaking into it, or bringing sound and movement into the emotion of shame. So sometimes if there's shame there and you may not feel totally okay with sharing it with someone first, it might be useful to say, okay, there's shame here. How does that shame want to express? And it might be through some movement. It might be through yelling. And so there's a somatic and the psychological side of things. Psychologically, shame can only exist through the perception that I've done something wrong or bad. That's actually guilt. Guilt is what I'm doing is wrong or bad. Shame says that I'm wrong, I'm bad. So through the form of language, shame exists in language, I'm wrong, I'm bad. And at the same time, there's the somatic side of things as well, which is there's years of holding on to shame. So that can be useful through either speaking it out loud, bringing movement and sound to it, or questioning and getting out of the paradigm that there's no such thing as I'm wrong, I'm bad. So those are three things that someone can do.
There's no such thing as I'm wrong or I'm bad.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, there's no such thing as I'm wrong, I'm bad. So if within me, there is nothing that says, Matt Cama, I am wrong, I am bad. Nothing. However, there are actions that I can do or actions that I've done where there's been an impact on people. There are things that I've done where there has been an impact on creating hurt within another. There's things that I've done that wasn't the healthiest. But that doesn't mean that who I am is wrong, I'm bad. There's just things that I've done that has created some consequences, that has had some impact on someone. But that doesn't mean that I am someone who is wrong and bad. So it's separating judgment from action, but also being realistic to see that there has been impact of my actions.
Yeah, because it's easy to just merge them together and think that I'm bad because I done that.
Exactly.
So this is something that I released this year with my ex-partner. I was with her for 7 years, and then I left her. I broke up with her, and yeah, it's really not a good breakup at all. And I basically carried that guilt for up until earlier this year.
Yeah.
And so actually when I went back to Thailand, we had a very healing conversation about that thing that happened 5 years ago. And because I carried that, I'm bad, I did this makes me a bad person because I did that to her. How could someone do that, you know?
Yes.
How could you break up with her after 7 years? You know, you're like, we was at the point where if I was to propose to her, she would have probably said yes. That was where I was. And then I just completely went the other way. And so I had so much guilt about that. And I remember talking to a guy here about it a few years ago, and he was like, dude, you need to heal that. And I didn't. And then earlier this year, I had a panic attack because I had a call with her, and she was talking about how it was like hard for her emotionally to move on from me and open her heart fully to other people.
Yeah.
And I just had so much guilt. Next morning, I had a panic attack because I'm like, fuck, it just killed me, like, you know? So I resonate with that a lot.
Yes. Yeah. It's huge. It's really, really important. And what helped you shift through that?
Just acceptance.
Yes.
Yeah, like accepting that this is, like, I'm not a bad person. And she helped me through that too, because she actually voiced that I'm not a bad person. And what actually helped me the most was when I went recently back to Thailand. She said, actually, what you did was the right thing because that helped me grow too. And I was like, wow, that's so healing for me to hear that, you know? So I just was able to release just from that conversation.
That's huge. And I love that you said acceptance, because a lot of the time someone can say, you know, I'm trying to forgive myself. But through self-forgiving, it's implying that I did something wrong or bad, which is still living in the paradigm that there's something to forgive, which I've done something wrong or bad. And that can be helpful for some, but I love to help myself in the past, or even with clients, to get into acceptance rather than forgiveness. So when someone can accept that what I did is what I did, and there was an impact. It's not wrong or bad, but there was an impact. It has created some hurt with another person, or it wasn't the best, it wasn't the healthiest. And then accepting that I was doing the best that I could from the level of awareness that I was at, the tools that I had available to navigate that situation, and the paradigm that I was in at the time. And I couldn't have done anything different because I was doing the best that I could at that time. And when someone can really let that land in the body, then there's acceptance. So there's no need for forgiveness because there's acceptance that I was just doing the best that I could at that time.
And that doesn't make me bad.
Nope.
Yeah.
No. It doesn't make me bad, doesn't make me wrong. It just means I did what I did.
Yeah, that's very important to distinguish that, because it's not you're bad, it's just you did something because that was where you were at that time.
Yes. Huge.
And the self-judgment is released at that point.
Yes.
Because now it's like, I just did that. Yeah, probably wasn't the best thing, but I did that, and I can accept that I did that.
Yes.
And that's not who I am as a person.
Yes. And that's when it's being self-responsible or responsible for the actions, but not blaming, which is different.
Yes.
So I can see, I did that, but why did I do that? I should have done something different. So should have, would have, could have. Right? And then there's blame in that language. I should have done this. I could have done this. If I just would have done that. But that's different to responsibility. I can see that what I did had an impact, and then I can even apologize to that person and really let them know that I am deeply sorry for the impact of that situation, and I was doing the best that I could, right? You may not want to say that, but like just complete ownership on my actions, but I'm being responsible now and moving away from self-blame. That can also be really healing as well.
Yeah. So for the men, what advice do you have for men when it comes to them being able to create a healthy relationship with women?
With women, start with yourself. Look at all the areas where there's self-judgment, all the areas where there's some fear with opening up, and then get really curious. Men, as you mentioned, it's very easy to be like problem solvers. So there's a lot of curiosity with men, a lot of curiosity about solutions, and just a lot of curiosity in general, whether they're saying it out loud, but they tend to be a lot more in their head, and it's a lot more curiosity, like constantly thinking. So I would say to redirect that curiosity to the self. Why am I the way that I am? Why do I have judgment of my emotions? Why is it that I do that? And then start with that. And then by becoming aware, awareness is always the very first step to transformation. So by becoming aware, that's the first step. And then I would say the second step is start to either get support, outside support, whether it be men's circles or a therapist or a coach, or having someone outside of you can really be supportive to direct you in a direction that's going to be most useful for what it is that you're calling into your life. So I think those are two simple steps that they could focus on.
Yeah, because it all starts with us, right?
Always.
It always starts with us. And yeah, what you said about the shame being like a block to intimacy. It's like if you're shameful about something, you don't want people to, you'd rather be alone because you don't want someone to come in and find out what you're trying to hide.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense.
Yes.
Yeah. And so one of the things I was shameful about was my skinny legs. And so, like to what we said earlier, but you bring light to it, right? So I started talking about it, and that actually helped me accept my skinny legs. Yeah. Just talking about it. I was like, because what I said earlier, I wrapped my identity into being a health coach.
Yeah.
And if you're a fitness health coach and you got skinny legs, then you lose credibility, right? But then I realized that everyone struggles with body image issues. So then speaking about it actually helped me connect more with people. Yeah. And yeah, so the release of shame actually helps you connect more. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's really, really huge. And one thing that might be, can I give you a suggestion on that as well?
Yes, please.
So one thing that might be useful as well is seeing that, talking about like relativity, right? So for example, the perception of you have skinny legs is only relative to someone else.
Right.
Another way of...
Relative to you, bro.
Relative to me, that's right. But if we can start to see that there's just legs there, and let's say that no one else existed but you, would you say that you have skinny legs?
No.
No, there's just legs there.
Right.
That doesn't have as much muscle compared to someone else. So even through the form of language that I have skinny legs, there's going to be emotion there that may be insecurity or whatever it might be. But if we can come back to there's just legs here, that doesn't have as much muscle compared to this. Or there's just legs. I have a body, full stop. There is a body that I am, a suit that I'm wearing right now, my soul is wearing, that, and it's a body that looks a certain way. Is it fat? No. Is there fat? Yes. Is there muscle? Yes. Does it mean I'm muscly? No. Does it mean that I'm fat? No. There's just fat and muscle on there. And I feel like that can be really useful to come back into just pure objectivity rather than looking through the lens of, I have skinny legs compared to this person here, then there's acceptance. So, does that...
But we're living in a culture it just shames, like there's so much shame around everything. In Instagram. So Emil's mum, she's a psychologist, and she said to me something that sticks with me. She said, we live in the world of not enough. And I was like, oh, that's so true. Like everything is just not enough. Like everything is just not enough. We always want more, more, more. Yep. And so there's so much comparison going on. And that's actually one of the things I'm working on is my comparison. I just compare too much. And that actually, one of my friends, he said to me the other day, he said, don't do things that lower your self-esteem. So when I'm looking at other people that are like way ahead of me, like that's actually not helping me.
Yes.
It's lowering my self-esteem because I'm going into that comparison trap. I'm not looking at it as like, I do look at it as an inspiration, but I tend to just go into the comparison trap. Yeah, and just get stuck in that game. Yes. And I think people do that in relationships too. They compare their relationship with someone else's.
Yes. And that's why it's also really useful to notice what, I'm sure that you coaching other people and you're very mindful of what you're consuming through the form of food and fluids, right? And also what can be helpful is being considerate about what we're consuming through our eyes and our ears, because that also has a big impact on the way that we're perceiving things. Our perception of reality can be distorted through what it is that we're consuming. So if I'm constantly on my page noticing dudes that are jacked, have massive muscles, then just because of what it is that I'm consuming, I'm going to look at myself completely different. And I'm going to start to notice that there's inadequacies about me, but it's only inadequate relative to what it is I'm constantly consuming. And the same thing about relationships, and the same thing about money and all of these different things. And what I would also say that if there is insecurity, it wasn't them, it was probably there the whole entire time. It's now just being enhanced and elevated through what we've been consuming. So we can still, for example, shift our body, get into a relationship, make our business bigger, but it can be through excitement of exploration. Let's see what's possible, rather than I need to do more, better, and something different in order for me to feel good enough. So now we're playing in the realm of let's see what's possible. Not let's do this because I want to be worthy. It's because then it's a dangerous trap. There's never going to be enough.
So how do you navigate around that then? So are you looking at other people's stuff and getting inspired, or are you doing the comparison thing, or what are you doing?
I would say that time and time again, the ego goes into that trap. And then I feel now I'm just very aware when that happens. And I'm very aware through the form of emotion. So when the ego goes into, now we need to earn this much money, I'm like, oh, that's actually, no, we don't need to do that, right? And how I navigate through that is I am constantly having desires, but I'm also being totally okay with the complete opposite. So then I'm practicing unattachment. So even just before this podcast, I was driving on my little scooter here, or in Bali, and I was on my scooter, and I set the intention that I wanted to have this be one of the most powerful podcasts that I've ever been on. But then my mind instantly went into, it's okay if it's also not that. Because then there's no resistance to whatever it is the way that it is, but let's just set that intention and explore what's possible if I set that as an intention. So for me, it's constantly, let's see and let's explore, and then my mind constantly goes into being okay with all the other possibilities that could happen. So I'm going to get this much money. Am I okay with not getting that? Yes. Okay, now let's do that through, let's explore and let's see what's possible, but there's no resistance to it. And time again, through I see someone else earning more, having something different than the way, having my desires, there might be some jealousy there. And the same thing that I've been mentioning at the start of this, can I just bring pure acceptance to that emotion that is showing up in my body, and then come back into the truth? Because that jealousy is arising out of my ego thinking that more, better, and different is going to make my life better, which it's not. It's just going to provide maybe more opportunities, but I don't actually want the money. It's the happiness, the joy that I feel from that. So can I just start with that and then explore what is possible? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So yeah, a few things you said there. So the more, better, and different is it's an illusion almost.
Yes.
You know, it is.
Yeah.
But I think that's exacerbated by Instagram.
Yeah.
You know, we're seeing people's chapter 20s, and we're on chapter 1, and it's more, better, and different. So that's what and it's oftentimes we're striving for people's goals that are not even our own.
Yeah.
Like it's
huge.
We're seeing someone else doing something, but that's not actually what we want, but we think we want it because we're seeing them having so much success, and it all looks great, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're borrowing other people's desires for life.
Yes.
And that's why it's also important to be very self-aware of, like, what does, for example, in business, what question that I asked everyone, the very first group coaching call that in my program, what will success look and feel like to you? Not to anyone else, but to you. Because maybe you earning $1 million a year is not success to you, because really you have kids and you actually want to have more time. And maybe for you, it's actually earning this much money, but also having the freedom to be able to, having the time to be able to spend way more time with your children. So for me, I've even just come back to that last week. What will success look and feel like to me? It's me having way more time to not be on coaching calls. Now, will I have less money? Maybe, who knows? But I, again, focus on alignment, because when I focus on alignment, abundance follows. When I focus on abundance, and that's the main thing, then alignment can tend to go into misalignment or unalignment. I don't know what the correct word is, but yeah, I'm not in alignment anymore. So I feel like that alignment for me is always quote unquote success.
Yeah, it's a really good question there. What will success look like and feel like?
Yeah, what is that? What is that answer for you?
I love being put on the spot. Yeah, so for me, it's just I was thinking about this a lot, and I think a lot about stuff. So when I was in Thailand, I use that as like a reset time to really just take a step back from everything and just rethink my life. And I started just thinking, what really matters to me in life? Like, because my friend told me the only things that matter are the things we make matter. So I was like, the only thing that matters to me is that I'm creating magical moments with my parents, because I heard this thing once of like, I see my parents like once a year. I haven't seen them for the last 2 years, but before that's once a year, right? So let's say they're going to live another 30 years. So that's another 30 times I'm going to see my parents. So then how do I want those times when I'm with them to be spent? And I want to be creating memories with them, right? So that's one of my goals, is to create more magical moments with my family, right?
Beautiful.
And that matters to me. What else matters to me? Creating impact and sharing and being inspiration, because I believe that I'm blessed with some gifts that I've only really realized this year, that I really enjoy being on camera, talking to people like yourself, like having really in-depth, meaningful conversations that can help people, and sharing more of that. So just doing what I'm doing on a bigger scale, basically. And yeah, that's it. Like right now, this is, if I was to die right now, I'd die happy. Right now, doing this, like this is what I'm in alignment when I'm doing this podcast, right? And I've had thoughts before of not wanting to continue this, but the people that I'm attracting is because of who I am. Again, going to your point of like working on a relationship with you attracts people that are of the same, birds of a feather flock together, right?
Yes.
So if I was not who I am, I wouldn't have attracted you onto this show, right? And the fact that you said yes, for example, like for me, that's a big compliment, honor for me, because like obviously you're amazing at what you do, and for you to say yes to come on here must mean I'm doing something right.
Yeah. This is the second podcast I've done of the year as well.
Oh, really?
I've said no to probably 50 podcasts. This is the second one. So
wow, thanks.
Yeah,
Appreciate
absolutely, man. Like, I was actually saying to my girlfriend before this, I'm like, because you met her, I remember at Cafe Coach.
That's right.
I remember him, and you're an awesome dude. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so just more of inspiring people, and of course, like helping my parents out, and just traveling more, I guess. Yeah, that's it really. It's not anything big. It's just optimizing your lifestyle more and creating more magical moments with my family.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That sounds like an amazing idea of success. I think that it can also be an illusion. What you coming back to? Yeah, success is more money and doing this and more followers, and that's not what people truly want. What people truly want is what you were mentioning, what you want with your parents, like magic moments. That's what people truly want, magic moments. And outside of magic moments, it's more so the feeling. What is the feeling that people want? Because if we start with the feeling, and then after we embody the feeling, everything else is just extra. Then we've won the game of life.
Absolutely. And I'd add to that, because I know I didn't mention anything about my relationship in that answer.
Yeah.
But just attracting like a partner who's on the same wavelength as me, because I've had partners in the past where they were, why do you think so much? Why do you ask so many questions? Like, and I started thinking, oh, am I doing something wrong here?
Yeah.
But actually, no, I'm not. I'm just expressing myself, and they just feel uncomfortable because maybe they're just not at the level, or I haven't broke that down yet, but I could see that we weren't in alignment. And just having a partner that's in alignment with who I am. That's what I'm calling into this world.
Oh yeah, man, I'm excited for that. And so it
like
is.
A healthy relationship like you have with Kelley.
Yes.
So before I get into that, when you took that transition from being a personal trainer and you took the next step, how did you actually get into being a relationship coach?
It was at the start of 2020. I would say that. Okay, so relationship coach, what I'm really doing is helping people to transform the way that they see themselves, and then by that, giving them tools to help them attract a relationship. So I've been doing that for a long time. However, when I started to create more content about relationships, I was documenting my healing process through a breakup that I went through at the start of 2020. And those videos were just like going super viral to me. And I was like, okay, well, there's something here. I love learning about relationships, talking about relationships. I've been doing it for a very long time. And now people are really starting to love what I'm learning. It was me just documenting my process. And then after that, I did some retreats, and I went through some other experiences of learning about relationships and tantra and sexuality. And then I wasn't labeled as a relationship coach. However, I was just talking about it because I loved speaking about it. And then when I met my girlfriend, Kelley, she was doing intimacy coaching, like helping women with their feminine energy and how they relate to sex and so on. And it was really in our relationship that we both started to go, let's just talk about this, because we both love speaking about it. And so it was a natural progression. It wasn't, it wasn't from a decision. Again, it was from a quote unquote accident. I just started to speak about it. People really loved it. And I'm like, this is awesome. Let me just go down this direction.
That's kind of like how I went into the health space as well.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. It's like I just had a transformation, and then I started sharing, and then people were like, oh, how did you do that? And
Yes.
just the next steps, like you said, the next steps revealed themselves.
People start asking.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's always true. Like the next steps always reveal themselves.
Always.
But in the moment, it doesn't feel like that.
No. Yes. Yeah. It's kind of like that Indiana Jones scene. I think it's Indiana Jones, when it's like you take that. Is it from Indiana Jones? Where you take that step on that illusionary rock, and then once you do that, then the next rock happens?
I wouldn't know, because I fell asleep when I was watching that in the movie theater.
I think it's Indiana Jones. Maybe someone in the comments can know what it is, but there's some movie like that. Yeah.
Right. So you were just doing what you loved, and then you just naturally fell into it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Follow the joy. If you follow the joy, things will naturally arise, but also get out of the expectation of how it has to look. Just follow the joy, and whatever arises, I believe. Yeah. And there's also strategy to it as well. So yes, I feel like it can be helpful getting a business coach or someone to support you with that.
Yeah.
And following your joy tends to always work out.
So that's the advice you give to your business coaching clients, is to follow their joy.
For sure.
If they don't want, they're like, hey, Matt, I don't know what niche to start. Like,
yes.
What do you tell them?
What do you love speaking about? What do you love learning about? What do you spend your time digesting? What brings you joy? If you were a billionaire, what would you speak about? Because then it's now, I'm not doing things for money. It's like, if I had all the money in the world and anything that I create is only because I love speaking about it, what would that be about? You know? So it's like, if I was a billionaire, would I still be doing this podcast? Yeah. Okay, well, that's a great indicator that I'm in alignment, right? So then it's not doing things for something, it's doing things for the pure enjoyment of it. And then we focus on alignment, abundance follows. So, yeah.
Huh. So if I was a billionaire, would I still be doing this podcast? Yeah.
There we go, right?
Yeah. But that's hard though, because, all right, like,
what about people who need money? That's the next question. Literally coaching someone on a group call with this yesterday. It's like, well, what about when I have bills to pay? So that's when self-trust tends to be absent. So for example, come back to that question, is the answer yes? Then that's a great thing. That's when someone knows they're in alignment. And at the same time, what I was coaching this person on yesterday is like, okay, were you able to pay your bills last month? Yes. Are you homeless? No. Okay, the month before that, were you able to pay your bills? Yes. What about the times where you didn't have a lot of money? Did you still find a way out of nowhere? Yes. So you're pretty damn awesome at making sure that you always find a way to pay your bills, to make sure that you're taken care of. It's like, yeah. I was like, okay. So can you now move forward knowing that no matter what, you're going to be okay because you have a whole history of always taking care of yourself? Even though there was challenges, can you still move forward and follow your joy knowing that you have a 100% success rate of taking care of yourself, of making sure that things are always done. You always find a way. So that's what I was coaching this person on yesterday. And then she just, shoulders dropped. She was breathing easier. And then I could start to focus a little bit more on strategy when the energetics and the perspective is in alignment, So starting off with the perspective and energetics in alignment, then the strategy can be useful.
Yeah, that's powerful to just really get people clear on the fact that they are okay, they are safe.
Yes.
Because it's so easy to default to, I'm not safe. That's where anxiety stems from, right? It's that I'm not safe.
Yes. And normally also, I'm not going to be okay. So it's usually those two together. Right. It's like, I'm not safe, and I'm also projecting into the future that I'm not going to be okay, which is why I helped that person get a reference experience that they always end up okay. Because then Because then I could have helped like do this strategy, do this, make this many posts, do a call to action, get a client here, do this thingy program. But it's through the energetics of I'm not going to be okay, so I need this client. But now the energetics is I always find a way. I'm going to be okay. So if this person says no, I'm all good. I have a past 100% success rate of always being okay, so I'm good no matter what. So now the energetics combined with the strategy is going to be completely different to just the strategy with the energetics of I'm not safe and I'm not going to be okay. So does that make sense?
Yeah, and the energetics that gets in the way of the work.
Yes.
Yeah, the emotions always mess things. Emotions always mess things up.
Yes, absolutely.
But that's a story I could believe, but I don't want to believe that.
Yeah.
You know, but there are times where how we feel about ourselves definitely affects the work.
Impacts it, absolutely.
Yeah. Like for example, like if you're holding on to something and it's not working. Like for example, with my health stuff, right? So like I was holding on to it for so long. Like holding on, and it's like, well, it's not working how I want it to work.
Yes.
So why do I keep holding on to it?
Yes.
And asking myself that question, but then not really finding a clear answer. But that's where outside help comes in, right?
Yes.
It's like you're avoiding. I was avoiding something.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah. Huge awareness.
Yeah, and again, having the humility to just be honest with myself.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm just like repeating the same day over and over again. And what's that? Dr. Joe Dispenza said 96% of our thoughts are the same as yesterday or something.
Yeah, wow.
So we're thinking about this yesterday every day. If nothing changes, nothing changes, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, that's probably very, very accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the next question I had is the relationship you have with Kelley now. I mean, what we were talking about earlier, from the outside looking in, it looks absolutely amazing. And I'm sure it is, because I know you embody everything you talk about. So how were you able to create such a healthy, loving relationship with Kelley?
Yeah, I'm just getting emotional even just thinking about it. It's been a big journey, and the how is coming back into the energetics again. Like I'll share the story. So when I first met her, I was at a retreat, and I did this ritual where I married myself. And in the marriage ceremony, I set myself vows. I shared vows with myself. And what really shifted energetically within me was being okay if I have a partner or if I don't have a partner. And that's why I was mentioning before, like when I set an intention, I come back to, okay, what are all the other possibilities, and can I be okay with all the other possibilities? Because then I can move forward from a space of zero resistance. Mm-hmm. So I did this marriage ceremony, self-marriage ceremony, and created the energetic frequency of just pure acceptance no matter what, while holding the desire that I'm calling in a partner. When I set those vows, did the vows, blew out a candle, kissed myself, did all these different things, within 12 hours, Kelley showed up in my DMs.
Wow.
Right? Yes. And, we could say that happened because of this, or happened because of this. Her friends shared one of my Twitter quotes, and she was like, who's this person? Because it was about men, normalizing the emotions of men, just feeling their emotions. And then she clicked on it, and she followed me, and I saw her profile pull up, like Kelley Bode has followed you, and I followed her back. And then she sent me a message. However, outside of that, I put it down to 12 hours beforehand, getting in complete acceptance that no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay with a partner or without a partner. Because if Kelley's sleeping next to me, regardless of who's sleeping next to me, I'm with myself 24/7. So that is the most important relationship that I can ever focus on. So, that happened. So the how of it, there's many different things before that, like doing works, learning about communication skills, releasing shame, releasing guilt, and at the same time, what I would say to anyone, and part of what my work as well, is when someone wants a relationship, I get them to be okay without a relationship. So can someone go their whole entire life without their love of their life? Once they can get to that, then I believe that's true freedom, because they're okay with all possibilities. So then they're calling in a partner from no resistance, rather than I need a partner, I need this person, I need them. So there's zero resistance there. So then things will start to show up in their life, whether it be the person they're going to spend the rest of their life with, or just someone that they're going to date for maybe a year or 2 years, but it may be necessary for them to then go into calling in their love of their life, you know?
Wow, that's super powerful. I never thought of that way.
Yes.
But yeah, if you get to that place where you're completely okay and know that you're going to be okay, being by yourself, then that is when, I guess that's when you know it's like a sign that you know you're ready for a healthy relationship.
Absolutely.
When you're at that place.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Being ready, not being perfect, because I think that a lot of people think that I need to get rid of all of my traumas, and I need to get rid of everything, and I need to get rid of all of my shame. But I like to say that be ready and be prepared, because once you're in a relationship, things that you didn't know are going to arise, right? There are things that I didn't know, that I didn't prepare for when I'm in a relationship with Kelley, that shame came up, or this thing came up, or this pattern. But I wouldn't have been able to be aware of it until I was in the relationship, because she was a mirror. She is a mirror. Like, oh, wow, I have this pattern here. I have this thing here. I have some shame around this. I didn't know about that. There's this blockage around intimacy here. So be ready and don't be perfect, because there's no such thing, and you're never going to be ready. Just be ready enough, you know?
Because relationships are our biggest teacher.
Yes.
Or our intimate relationships, especially, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because you reveal everything about yourself. And you can't hide. There's no hiding.
Yes.
And if you do hide, it creates conflict. Absolutely.
And also coming back to what you mentioned, like from the outside in, it's like the most amazing relationship. And one of the things that we have a relationship program that we're running right now, and we just share everything. Like we had this quote unquote fight like the week beforehand, and we had this thing come up, and this is how we dealt with it. And I think that that's also important to know, because any relationship that is great from the outside, well, you have to actually question, because there's been times where I saw relationships that looked amazing, started to see actually what goes on, and it's not as amazing. However, there's a lot of uncomfortable conversation that goes on. There's a lot of sharing things that we hold shame about to each other. There's a lot of deep inner work that we get outside of the relationship. You know, I'm in 2 men's groups. I have weekly coaching sessions. So then that way I can bring the very best of me to Kelley. And there's a lot of work that goes into it. So 98, I don't know the exact percentage, but a lot of the time, majority of the time, it is the best. And there's times where there's challenge, and that's inevitable to happen in a relationship. If there are no challenges, if there are no uncomfortable conversations, my guess is that there's probably a lot of withholds, meaning someone isn't sharing their complete truth. Someone isn't actually being their true version of them, maybe, right? So I feel like naturally, there's going to be challenge that happens in a relationship. You got to think about it. There's 2 people, 2 different backgrounds, 2 different paradigms about their beliefs about what is okay for them, what's not okay for them. They enter into a relationship. There's going to be some things that they're not in complete alignment with, right? So challenges are inevitable in relationships, but it also means that after every single time that we've had a fight, for example, there's always been deeper levels of love and connection on the other side of it. So it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, as you say that, I'm thinking about all the altercations that I've seen and had in my own relationships, and it's easy to think that having an altercation in a relationship will push you further away. So how do you become more connected after having an altercation? Because just thinking about it now, like all the women I've dated, like it's actually, when we've had an argument, it's actually pushed us further away.
Yeah.
So first of all, why does that happen, and how do you be more connected after altercation?
Great question. So a lot of the time it happens because of a lack of skill, whether it be with communication or conflict resolution. So I believe that there's a few most important skills in a relationship. One of those things is communication. The second thing is conflict resolution, and another one, let me break down a few. Communication in general, being able to speak my needs, being able to speak my boundaries, and being able to do it healthfully in a way that the other person is able to comprehend. The second thing is conflict resolution. It's inevitable to happen in a relationship. So it makes sense to definitely put attention and intention into learning how to resolve conflicts. Another one is being able to display empathy, because the foundation for conflict resolution is me being able to put myself in your shoes, whether it be through emotional, like what would it be like for you to be able to have your experience. So that's more of a mental empathy. So there's that there. And then the last thing I would say is self-regulation or co-regulation skills. So conflict resolution is being able for me to have my needs and your needs together and being able to find where both of our needs can be met rather than compromise. Because compromise is one of the worst things that you can do in a relationship, right? Because compromise is you have needs, I have needs. Fuck my needs, your needs are most important, so I'm going to put my needs aside and then meet your needs. Or it can be the opposite. Conflict resolution is I have needs, you have needs. How can we find a way where both of our needs can be met? And there might be times where they just can't be met, so then there's a whole conversation about compatibility, right? But in a relationship, there's going to be times where both of our needs can be met. So there's that. And then the last part of that, after the conflict resolution, there's something called co-regulation, which is being able to regulate both of our nervous systems, especially after conflict, not conflict, I was about to say fight, but after conflict, to come back together. So that might look like snuggling. It might look like breathing. It might look like laughing together and just noticing our egoic patterns that came up and just being completely honest about it. So for example, I'll share a real one here. There was about 3 weeks ago where Kelley and I were having a call with our clients about communication. And 5 days before that, we had some conflicts. And my egoic patterns came up. I was just like stonewalling, which basically means not me showing any emotions. I was wanting to be right. So it was my ego and her ego in a conflict, not Matt and Kelley. And after that, I was just like, I just wanted to just go in my room. So I went in my room. I didn't want to speak about it. And then afterwards, she knocked on my door, and we came back together. Long story short, we came back together, and we just started to laugh about all of the different patterns that were coming up that we noticed. Like, yeah, I noticed myself wanting to punish you by not responding to your message, or I noticed my ego wanting to punish you by just not being truthful about me feeling triggered, right?
Yeah.
So that is a skill that you can learn. Conflict resolution, co-regulation.
Yeah, it's super important. So as you're saying this, it sounds like people just don't have the skills. They don't have the tools to deal with this.
Absolutely.
Like communicating your needs.
Yes.
That's something that you're really big on, and communication in a relationship. And there's so many things to go into, but first of all, just being able to speak up and say what you need. Like, hey, I need this right now. So for example, there was one time Kelley needed something, and you bought her some chocolate, I believe, right? There was a time when you bought her some chocolate. She needed something.
Are you talking about when she had her period?
That's right. Yeah. Because you shared it on
Instagram.
Yeah, that's right. And
you've done your research.
Yeah. And you said, what do you need right now?
Yes.
You know.
Yeah. So the story was, she had a period, and the question that I asked is, how can I be most loving to you when you're on your period? Like, how can I be the best boyfriend during that time? And then she communicated, like, I'd love like chocolate, I'd love extra cuddles, like during that time. Women are completely different humans during that time because of the biochemistry that shifts, pretty much every single week. Every single week, for men listening, you have a different girlfriend every single week biochemically, right?
Yeah.
So especially during that time, things can be a little bit more tender. Things can be a little bit more emotional purely because of the biochemical change in their body. So I asked her, like, what is it that you need during that time? How can I be most loving and supportive during that time? And one of the simple things was just having chocolate. I was like, gotcha. So that day I went and got her some of her favorite chocolate here in Bali, and so that can be a great question to ask your partner. What is it that you need, or how can I be more loving to you? And that's why we have like relationship check-ins to really identify out of all the different areas of the relationship, how can we meet each other's needs in a deeper way? Because just like transforming your body, a lot of people who are serious about that, they will have a monthly check-in, or maybe even a weekly check-in, or in a daily check-in. DEXA scans, let me check my body fat percentage, let me do this. Oh wait, there's a skill to lifting weights. If I time under tension, if I'm lowering my reps on the eccentric phase and the concentric phase for this time, there's a skill that will create muscle breakdown. So it's the same thing with any area of life. There's a skill to that. So if someone wants an extraordinary relationship, it might be useful to put in time to learning the skills to what creates that.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, absolutely. And just understanding that maybe your partner won't be able to fully express what they need, but
Yes.
giving them the space with a question like that
Yeah.
allows them to express what they need, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because that's something that I've realized too, is if they don't know how to express it,
Yes.
then I have to provide the space for them to express.
Exactly.
Otherwise, I can't read minds.
Yes.
And this is what we expect in relationships, right? We expect our partner to just, especially women, they do this a lot. They're just like, he should just know what I want. Like, he should just know.
Yes. Yeah, and I say that that's one of the most dangerous words that you can say in a relationship. They should just know. 4 most dangerous words. Yes.
Did you have a piece of content on that? That's a really good piece of content.
I have a Twitter quote on that. I remember I
right.
put that on a piece of on Twitter once. They should just know is the 4 most dangerous words you can say in a relationship.
Yeah. They should just know. Like, that's, yeah. I mean, how many women say that, right? You've probably coached so many women who just like, why doesn't he just get it? Like, but that's the thing. Women want a guy to just get it. Like, they do want that. Like, they do want a guy to just know what he's doing and be the guy that they want, the king that they dream about. And so many men are falling short of that, I guess, in a way. But it's like an expectation on the woman's side as well.
Yeah, and coming back into what I always love to meet someone in is whether it be a man or a woman, whoever, who has that they should just know mentality, it makes sense. Like, it would feel really good for me not to be able to communicate my needs, and Kelley's just like, boom, got it, boom, got it, boom, I got everything, right? It makes sense why someone has that. Yeah. Because it would feel really, really good. The challenge, though, is that if someone is living in that paradigm that they should just know, it's not going to help them create the relationship that they want. So meeting that, oh yeah, it makes sense why you have that. I can see why you have a desire for me to just know, and I don't. So it would be really useful for me to be able to meet your needs if I can create a space to be able to help you to know that you can communicate anything with me. Which is why in conflict resolution, one of the things that is a core teaching of conflict resolution is that it only takes one person to be skilled at that for the relationship to transform for the better. Just one. Because if someone has not the best practice in communication or conflict resolution, but someone doesn't know how to communicate, but I can meet them energetically with all of you is welcome, there is nothing that you can say that I'm going to judge. This is nothing. Energetically, in motion, I can hold that, and I have the practice at being able to, pull out your desires, pull out your needs through questions, then the relationship will transform for the better just because I am more practiced at that, right? I have the skill of that. Yeah. So it's also important that if someone doesn't have, if someone can focus on if someone can put their focus into conflict resolution or communication, if you're more skilled at that, you can create a relationship that you want, even if the other person doesn't have the best skills. To some degree, if someone is not open to being able to communicate completely, then that's a different conversation.
Yeah. And that requires the values to be similar, right? So this is segueing into another thing. So what are the key things that you look for in a partner? For example, like values, compatibility. What are the ingredients?
For compatibility?
Yeah, to attract your dream partner, because values have to be similar.
Yes.
Compatibility. You can talk about it more.
Yeah, well, I love to give a checklist to my clients. Like, there's a compatibility checklist that I give them. So there's values, absolutely. Yep. So are your similar values in alignment? And then also for people who are religious, that also falls under the category of values. So if someone identifies themselves as, or someone is Christian, or someone is Muslim, it can still work. It just may not work as well compared to if someone has the very same values, right? So are your top values similar, right? So meaning the things that are most important to you. So if someone's really, really healthy and the other person isn't really healthy at all, can it work? Yes. But can it work to the degree that it could work if someone had similar values or the same values? No, right? So are your values in alignment? Second thing is your vision. So meaning, do you both want kids? Do you both want to get married? If no, then that's going to create some conflict. Or your vision for where you want to live. If one person is, I just want to travel the world, and the other person is, I just want to stay home and just have a life like this, that's going to create some conflicts, right? So there's values, there's vision, there's also communication as well. That's another part of that I like to touch on. So is the other person able to communicate to a similar level or a same level as you? So those are 3 things that people can start off with.
Yeah, that's huge, especially the vision, because
Massive.
that's something that is. I was only made aware of this, I think, to your post actually earlier this year, because you did Ask Me Anything, and I remember a lot of stuff you say actually.
Oh, amazing! That's good.
Yeah.
That's great feedback.
I'm like, you got some really good content. Like, I learned a lot from you actually.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the vision part was huge for me, because I was like, I've never actually thought about that. Like, what's their vision? What's my vision?
Yes.
You know, and it's like they just want to chill, and I want to do all this stuff, and there's just a gap. It's just and sometimes I've seen this in some of my friends, like they're traveling or whatever, doing business and worldwide, and their partner's trying to keep them at home. They're like, why do you keep traveling? And it's like their visions don't align, but of course you're not aware of that when you're in it. You're just like, why is she always trying to get me to stay home? I'm trying to like conquer the world, Yeah. And it's like the visions don't align. So she's actually, you guys are not compatible that much.
Yes. Yeah. And that can work to some degree as well. I'll also come back to one of the other things is sexual chemistry as well. That's a whole other conversation. Sure. Yeah. But also, like, if someone does have a partner that's like, go out there, conquer the world, do your thing, and then another person wants to be a stay-at-home mom, that's awesome. Yeah. That can definitely work, right? That's something that Kelley and I have spoken about. Like, a big part of her desire is to be like in the future, like a mom that stays at home, takes care of the family, and being so supportive for me to be the one that goes out there and, conquers the world, does the things and working, and because I love that. And she also really loves the idea of having a family. So that can still work, even though it's completely different values. But if the other person is supportive to the other person, then it can definitely work. So, however, if there's judgment for the other person, then that's when it can be, that can create some disconnection. But another one that I like to talk about is, sexual chemistry. Yep. Because just like there's love languages, there's also sex love languages. And if someone they don't have to be the same, but if someone isn't able to meet them at their same level of what brings them, what creates that chemistry, it can create some challenges. So for example, if someone's super kinky, they're really, really kinky, and another person isn't very kinky, they don't really like that, then that's going to create disharmony in the relationship. But if the other person is kinky and the other person is able to explore that, then that can create some harmony and some sexual chemistry. So that's something as well that's important to consider.
Yeah, the sexual chemistry, that's like a huge one for me personally, because there's no longevity in it. If the sex ain't good and there's no alignment there, then it's just like
yes,
we're just friends.
That's the difference. Like a big difference between a romantic relationship and also friendship is that the sexual chemistry, right? Is the sexual intimacy. Otherwise, you just have a friend. That you're living with.
Yeah, exactly. So what's you do relationship check-ins every month? Yeah. So what actually, how is that structured?
So we have a whole program on that, so I won't go into every single step. However, one of the things that we do is, for someone who you don't need to go into the whole process that we teach, but every single month, setting a date and a time, whether it be at the end of the month or the start of the month, and just checking in with through the form of questions, like, how is the relationship going? We have a whole entire process, but you can just ask for anyone listening, on a scale of 0 to 10, we don't like to say scale of 0 to 10, we give a system where it's called the Love Lat system. So red, orange, green. Red means my needs aren't met, there's something here that we get to focus on that's just not working. Orange is my needs are met and there's something that I want even more of. Green is I'm good, there's nothing to even talk about, we can go to the next thing. So it could be, let's talk about sex. Sex and intimacy, where are you? You know what, right now I'm a red, and then we can go into what we're appreciating about the other person, and then also what we want even more of. So we can look at sex, we can look at communication, we can look at our connection together, we can look at the adventure that we're experiencing in the relationship, and go through all the different areas of a relationship and really check in on where are we? Am I red, orange, or green? What do I appreciate about the other person as it relates to this area? And what do we want even more of? Because if we're just going, I want more of this, without the appreciation, then we don't like leaning in with that. Like just with like giving feedback to another person, it really helps to receive the request if it's first met with acknowledgement and appreciation. So that's how we do it.
Wow, that's a radical honesty.
Yeah.
Every month.
Every month. Well, not every month. There's been some months where we haven't done it.
Yeah.
Full transparency, but consistently. Yeah.
And how does that help your relationship then?
Massive, because we also have a system where we teach to share withholds. So withholds are things that maybe we haven't said, but we have an opportunity now to be able to speak about the things that we've been holding on to that wants to be brought to the light. So there's been massive things that we've spoken about during our relationship check-ins, where I've been holding on to something or Kelley's been holding on to something, and we're able to bring that into the conversation. So then that way we're not continuing the relationship with things that we're holding on to that haven't been said. Because in a relationship, if those things aren't spoken about, it starts off with resistance. If that resistance isn't spoken about and taken care of, isn't massaged, right, through the form of open communication, that resistance will then turn into resentment. If that resentment isn't looked at, then that resentment will turn into repulsion. Then that ends up in a breakup. And if that thing that wasn't spoken about with the resistance isn't integrated, isn't disintegrated, isn't healed, isn't integrated, then that repulsion will then turn into being recycled into the next relationship. So then it starts again. Same person, different face, different name. Starts off with resistance again. Because the thing that hasn't been looked at, whether it be me not communicating my needs or some type of challenge that I'm feeling within, is just going to keep continuing. So those 4 R's are important to remember. So that, just takes away any of that resistance that's there. So now it's just pure connection without any resistance or any walls. And then also we have our needs met, because we're speaking about, I would really love, sex in the morning, or I would love sex more times, or I'd love to have this type of sex, or I'd love to have this, or I'd really love to go on an adventure or a getaway, or I'd really love to have some time together where there's no phones, and we're creating a space where our needs can be spoken about and met. Or counter, where, I can't do that, but how about we do this instead, where both of our needs can be met. So, in a lot of ways.
Wow, that's a very in-depth explanation, and there's a lot of things that go into that, but it's so important to get those withholds out into the open.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise, it can harbor resentment, and then, ultimately lead to a breakup. And
it can.
Yeah. And it's happened so many times. I've seen it so many times, and I've definitely experienced all of that myself as well.
Me too.
Yeah. So what's been your biggest? What's the thing that you're most proud of in this realm, like with relationships and your own inner work?
Great questions. I love your questions, man. The thing that I'm most proud of, I know it's a great question when I don't know the answer straight away. In regards to relationships, right?
Yeah.
I would say just who I am to be able to attract someone like Kelley. Like who I've had to become, and the pain that I've got to feel and let go of, and the paradigm shifts that I've leaped into, or who I've remembered myself to be able to attract someone like Kelley is, I'm so grateful that I've attracted someone like her. I was actually just sharing with her 2 days ago or 3 days ago. I just shared with her that I feel so blessed. I don't like to say lucky, but blessed and grateful that I'm in a relationship with someone that makes it so easy. Because she's so great at communicating. Yeah. And in order for that to happen, I had to be able to create some skills in order for me to attract someone like her. So I'm really proud of who I've become and who I've attracted because of that.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, because going through breakups is not easy.
No.
And doing the work on yourself takes a lot of courage to do that, and admitting where you're falling short in life, really, about your relationship with yourself.
Yes.
And so how does someone heal their wounds that they have from a breakup? How to heal from a breakup?
Great question. I would say that patience, number one, not putting a timeline on their journey for how long it takes to heal from a breakup, because that can be something that's like, oh, I should be over this person. It's been 6 months. Yes, and you've gone through a lot of hurt. So I like to bring it back to how someone would heal from a broken bone. If someone's ever broken a bone or if someone's ever having a muscle tear, there's a few ingredients that's in that creates the healing process to happen. So number one, there's time, meaning that someone gives themselves patience and honors where they're at to know that, you know what, right now I'm a little bit limited to move my arm because I have a muscle tear or a broken bone. And the same thing can happen when going through a breakup. You might be limited to the amount of joy that you can experience, or you might not have the desires to go out because you're hurt, right? So giving yourself the same level of grace and acceptance through for where you're at in your current journey of life right now. So meeting yourself with acceptance and patience. Number two, the second thing that tends to happen if someone has a broken bone is that they might go to a professional. It's like, you know what, like, doctor, I have a broken bone. Like, what do I do? Let's put the cast around, do this, and this. Or a muscle tear, I might go get some rehabilitation. So every week I might go to someone. And I feel like that can be helpful as well. Navigating through a breakup find a coach, find a friend, find someone outside support to really help you along your journey. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is, I already came back to this, but grace. Any emotion that you feel, allowing yourself to honor any emotion that you feel from the breakup, instead of just bypassing the emotion and getting to a higher perspective. Like, yeah, everything happens for a reason, and that reason is to serve me. Like, it's like everything's meant to happen, life is serving. Like, that's really great, and you're hurt, and you're feeling sadness, and you're feeling anger. So rather than bypassing the emotions and going to a higher perspective, can you allow yourself to honor the emotions and let the higher perspective naturally happen as a byproduct of the emotions being accepted and honored?
Yeah, because it's so easy to just, like you said, just bypass it.
Yes.
And be like, I'm good. But you haven't processed the past.
Yes.
We have to process it. Like, we just can't just keep moving forward, because it ends up coming back. Like, the stuff ends up coming up to the surface at the wrong times, and you don't want it to.
Yeah, it will end up happening. If it's not dealt with now, it will end up happening in a future relationship.
Yeah, so healing from a breakup is really important. But when is the time where you would recommend people start dating again? How does someone know when they're ready to start dating again?
Great question. So there's two perspectives on this. Number one, remember that, come back to the broken bone or injury, like someone, if you're playing, like, if you're doing jiu-jitsu or boxing, someone can still box and do jiu-jitsu when they have an injury, right? So you can do jiu-jitsu or any sport, and there's a difference between being injured and having an injury. So I might have an injury, but I can still play the sport. But if I'm injured, then it may not be great to be in the sport completely, because I'm just going to be re-injured. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So like right now I have knee challenges, I have knee injuries, ankle injuries, I have some back injuries, but I'm still able to like play rugby. And sometimes it still comes up, like there's some back pain, but I'm still able to play the game. So remember that when dating, you don't have to be fully perfect and you can still date while having an injury. But if you're injured, then that's when you're not ready. So the way that I like to break this down is, rather than like having 10 steps to identify if you're ready to date, I like to just go straight to the core, which is if someone closes their eyes and they were able to breathe and put their attention and intention on the area of their heart energy center, that is the ultimate form of where you're going to get your advice. So someone can search on Google and ask from the head, like, am I ready to date? But if they were able to ask that same question, and rather than type it, but ask it to their heart and see the very first answer that comes up, am I ready to date? While they're breathing, putting their attention on here, their heart's going to give them an answer. Right now, I am injured and I am not ready. They're not going to say those words, but right now, I am not ready to date right now. So then we can go into the answer. Rather than me giving someone an answer, I let their body and their heart give the answer for them. And a distinction about this is the very first answer tends to be from the heart. The second answer will probably be from the ego. It's like, am I ready to date? No. but you know, it's been 3 months and I'm ready. You know, so that's normally from the ego's perspective. So that's something that can be helpful.
Yeah, it's very helpful.
Yeah.
You can justify it, right?
Yes. Right. That's from the mind.
Yeah. Yeah, so we covered a lot of things, and we're just running like on 2 hours here. So
Awesome. Big
I'm not-
podcast. It's been 2 hours already.
yeah, that's right.
Damn.
Yeah.
Oh.
There's so much more we can cover. I just want to add something real quick about communicating needs.
Yeah.
Because that's been so hard for me, and I'm like, why is it so hard for me to tell someone what I need?
Yes.
Where does that come from? Why is it's literally like trying to like get words out of me, like pull words out of me. It's so hard.
Yes.
I'm like, I don't know. I think it's to do with people pleasing. Like me, I would take responsibility from a young age. I think it started from when I was 16 years old. We had this barbecue at our house, and I don't know why, but I just assumed the role of like caregiver to everyone. So I'd greet them at the door, all the guests, and I'd get them food and get them drinks. And then everyone was saying, "Oh, Aaron's such a great boy," like telling my mum, "Aaron's so lovely. He's doing this for us, doing this for us." And she's like, "Yeah, he's a really good kid. He's really good." And so I learned, I think, in that moment that, if I please other people, I get love and approval and acceptance.
Yes.
So therefore, that's what I should do. I should put others' needs before my own. Like that day, I didn't eat until super late. Like we started like 3 o'clock, and I ate at like 8 p.m.
Yeah.
because I was just serving everyone else's food.
Yes.
And that's where I think I learned to put everyone's needs before my own.
Massive.
So
Yeah.
then that's the pattern that's been happening in my relationships too. So I would overexert in relationships, and then get resentful when they don't give it back.
Yes. Yes.
But it's like a form of manipulation. I didn't know this. It was a form of manipulation of like, I'm going to do so much for you, and I expect that you give me something back because I've done so much for you.
Yes.
You know, it's just that's so bad.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And then I'd resent them when they don't do what I expect them to do.
Yes. Come back to the conversation we had earlier, right? Yes.
So, just communicating what I need from them would be hard. So I would just do so much in order to not have to communicate, rather than, hey, I need you to like meet me here, meet me halfway at least. So why do you think it's so hard for people to express their needs?
Great question. So I'll give multiple answers to that question because there's the first part, the energetic side of it, psychological side of it, which is being inclusive of yourself when communicating. So people pleasing, there's many different layers of it. Normally, a lot of the time it can be linked to the fear of conflict. So if I communicate my needs or if I say the thing that I'm really thinking and feeling, then the other person might get mad at me or I might get in trouble. And then it might be linked to the deeper thing that I'm not going to be a good boy or I'm a bad boy, right? There's these multiple layers to this that tends to have someone not communicate their needs. So that's one part of it. But also a practice that anyone can give, someone can use, is reminding themselves that they are included in love. So meaning, rather than everything is about the other person's needs, it's like my needs matter. Coming back into that. My needs and who I am matters in this relationship. And it is one of the highest forms of rejection if I am rejecting the 4-year-old, 7-year-old, 10-year-old, 20-year-old, however old you are, I am rejecting that part of me when I'm not speaking up for that. So really when they're communicating, when someone's communicating, it's being inclusive of themselves first, right? So love is including of you. So that's the first part. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And the second thing is having strategy around that. So strategy can definitely support. So one of the things that I like to teach is the I feel I need formula. Really simple, anyone can use this. So it could look like, you know what, like right now I feel a little bit tense and I would really need some alone time. And then there's a distinction between a demand and an invitation or a request. So what makes a difference is asking a question at the end of that. So I feel like really stressed right now and I'd really need some alone time. How does that sound to you? You know what, that sounds great. Yeah, do that. You know what, that doesn't sound great to me. Okay, now we're in a conversation about how both of our needs can be met. So maybe that person needs like a timeline. You know what, I really need like 10 minutes by myself. Can you do that? And then I'd love to continue this conversation. So I feel I need followed by a question to create the invitation or the request. Or another one might look like, you know what, I feel a little bit tired and what I really need is to go to sleep, or what I'd really love is to go to sleep rather than have sex right now. And then that can either be a request or it's like, how does it feel if we have sex tomorrow morning? So now my needs are taken care of. I really need to sleep, or I'd really love to sleep rather than have sex. But I'm taking your needs into consideration. How would it feel if we have sex in the morning? Does that make sense?
Right.
So there's the skill component of it. I feel I need question. But then there's also looking at, we are naturally as kids, we speak up about our needs. We'll cry. We're super caring about ourselves first. You know, I'm hungry. Mom, I want some food. Dad, I want some food, when we're really, really young before the conditioning. So now it's just about looking at what's in the way. Not how do I communicate, that can be helpful, but like what's in the way of that? What's the fear? What is it that I'm projecting into the future that would have me not speak up? What is it that I'm believing about myself that would have me not speak up? And usually it could be linked to I don't matter, or it could be linked to I'm bad, or I'm wrong, so I can't speak up because I don't matter. So there's strategy and then the somatic psychological side of it.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in there, right?
Yes.
It's deep stuff. It's always the root, how we see ourselves, the root belief that we have about ourselves, right?
Absolutely.
And something you said there, you said, I feel tired, so will it be okay if we have sex in the morning?
Yep.
Like,
how does that sound to you?
Yeah, how does that sound to you? That is something that I think a lot of people would have an issue with, because sex typically is supposed to be something spontaneous, right? So I think, do you plan your sex with your partner?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that real quick? Because that's something that a lot of people, I mean, just speaking for myself, like when I first heard that, I was like, wouldn't that take the fun away from it? Because it's supposed to be it's just like a thing that happens. It's not really something that you plan.
Yeah, and it absolutely can. So it's looking at what are all of these shoulds supposed to, like, it's just questioning all the things that we've learned about relationships. Like my girlfriend and I, we have our own room. You know, I know that not everyone's fortunate financially to be able to have that, but we have our own room. We have our own bed. A lot of the times we sleep in our own beds. There's a lot of things that we have been spoon-fed about relationships. And one of those things are your sex isn't supposed to be planned. Who the fuck said? Who says that? Where did we get all of this information? Yeah. And that can be helpful. Like there are some people where they have breaks to intimacy. Like what that might look like and be like is, you know, for them to be truly ready for sex, there might be like, you know, I'd really love to shower. I'd really love to take care of myself. I'd really love to set the room. And, you know, that could be great. But there are some people sexually where there's something called the erotic blueprint, where they might be very sexual, meaning they don't care about how the bed looks. They don't care about how the room is. They don't care about the smell, the sound of the room, or the sound going on in the background. But for some people, for them to be turned on, the room gets to be clean. They get on some music. They get to put some scent on in the background. And then now there's no breaks to intimacy. It's actually an accelerator now. So it's not about what's wrong, what's bad. It's looking at what is more useful to you. Because there's a lot of times where we plan, there's a lot of times where we don't plan. But it's looking at, for you and your partner, what is going to be most useful. Throw out all the rule books, like what's most useful for you. Is it scheduled intimacy? That can be really great. And intimacy doesn't have to be sex. There might be 2 hours that we block off on a certain time where it might be just kissing or might be talking, and it might lead to sex. And a lot of the time it does, but a lot of the time it might not. So it's scheduling time for intimacy, not so much sex, because I feel like that's important. Especially if people have kids, especially have a busy lifestyle. Yeah. You know, that might be really useful for their relationship.
Yeah, because to your example, you know, if you're tired, that happens a lot. Like some of my clients I coach, you know, they talk about how they get home from work and they're tired, and you know their wife wants them to be intimate, and they're like, you know,
I don't have the energy.
That's exactly. So, they have to have the communication skills to be able to communicate in a way that doesn't let her know that it lets her know that she's okay. Yes. You know, she's safe, and that he actually does find her attractive still, because he can communicate in a way where she doesn't feel like that. Oh, he's always tired. He doesn't. That means he doesn't like me. He's not attracted to me anymore because he never wants sex with me. Yeah. You know, but that's just how he communicates that. Yes. So yeah, there's subtleties in language.
Yes. It's everything. I would say, like, Yeah, our life is built on language. Our whole paradigm is built on language. So helping someone to become aware of their language that they're using is a big part of my work as well.
Yeah. And you're really big on that, the communication, like picking apart language.
Yeah.
I noticed that.
Yeah, the smallest little shift in how someone is speaking can create a massive shift in their physiology, you know? So, yeah, super important.
Yeah, and real quick, the last thing I want to touch on is the listening.
Yes.
Because that's something that you're really big on. And the communication is like the top umbrella, but at the root of it is listening will create better communication in your relationship.
Yeah.
Right?
You've done your research, man. Did you watch like my videos on that?
Yeah, dude, I watch your
I
stuff.
love this. You've done your preparation. Yeah, listening, I believe it's the most important outside of speaking up about someone's needs or conflict resolutions. I believe listening is the most important part. Not that I don't want to go into the hierarchy, but I do believe that listening is the foundation for great communication and conflict resolution skills. Because if I'm not able to, if I have all the skills for conflict resolution, but I don't know how to listen, then I can't really identify what the other person really needs, especially if the other person may not be able to know their needs. But if I'm deeply listening, I can really say, so it sounds like, you really need some reassurance right now. And then the other person might be crying and they're like, yeah, that's what I really need, right? Well, it sounds like you just really want me to spend more time with you, right? They may not say those exact words, or Kelley might not say these exact words, but just because I'm practiced at listening, I can really see the needs that she has outside of all the different things that she might be presenting, right? That might look like a complaint, or it might look like something that she's just venting about. If I'm able to listen to what is she saying behind what she's saying, right? Same thing with anyone. If you can listen to what is being said behind what is being said, you will have an amazing relationship. And it's a skill, being able to practice listening without needing to fix the other person, without perceiving the other person that there's something wrong with them, and being able to self-regulate while you're listening as well, noticing any tendency that, I want to prove this person right, or I want to show them why their perspective is wrong. But rather than meeting them at their experience is their experience, and can I just have curiosity and empathy for where they're at right now, rather than rather than me trying to prove why I am right and they're wrong. So that gets in the way of listening. But then there's skills with listening as well that I can expand on if you want, but that's the big practice, again, energetically.
And also being present when they're speaking.
Yes.
Because that's super hard for people to do. And it's something that I've had to learn as well. And I'm getting better at it constantly. Like actually becoming a coach actually helped me with this. Because coaching, of course, as you know, is a lot of listening.
Yes.
You have to listen to what they're saying and really understand what's behind what they're saying, like you said.
Yes.
Like what are the needs, or what are the patterns that they're not aware of, that you're aware of, that you can point out and pinpoint. But yeah, like just understanding how to be present in a conversation. That's a big thing in and of itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, and to know how to be present, notice what takes you out of presence, because you're naturally present. There's nowhere else that you could be physically. Mentally you can be in a different world, but physically you can't be anywhere else other than where you are. So what is the thing that is taking you out of presence? Is normally a perspective, or normally something that the mind is taking you out of presence because of some type of conversation. So realizing what is taking you out of presence will bring you back into here with the other person.
What is like a strategy that you can share with people? Because that's like men, when they're listening to their lady, a lot of times they're just like for me, for example, before, this is my work that I've had to do, is I didn't know how to handle my woman when she was crying, and she would complain about someone in her life or whatever. And in my mind, my inner dialogue is like, this is fucking bullshit. This doesn't matter, right? As I'm listening to her. And so that's the story I'm playing in my mind. So I'm not actually present, because I think whatever she's saying, I'm just like pretending to listen rather than actually listening, because I think it's bullshit.
Yes, absolutely. That makes sense. So how do you, for men listening?
Yeah, so if a guy's listening to his partner and he's like, oh, this is fucking bullshit, but I'm just going to listen anyway because I know she wants me to listen.
Yeah, great. So the way to do that is, if you notice that they may not be able to be aware that it is judgment, but it is a form of judgment. When either they're trying to fix a situation, there's a form of judgment that there's something wrong. So to go from judgment, what we really want to go into is empathy. And the way that I love to break it down to my clients is that the bridge between judgment and empathy is curiosity. And curiosity is created through questions. So the question you can ask is anytime that your partner is venting and they're having this challenge, and even though you know from your perspective, like, just do this. That's what men can normally just fix it by doing this. Bringing curiosity might look like, I wonder what it would be like to be in her body right now. What would it have felt like through all the life experience that she's had to be perceiving her current circumstance that she's emotional about? Like, what would that feel like? What would it be like to be her? And then just through curiosity, the bridge between judgment and empathy, naturally you will cross that bridge and be like, okay, I can really see why you're sad right now. If I get it. I get why you're sad, and I'm sorry that you had that experience. And I'm here with you. Like, tell me more. Like, what else are you feeling? So then, again, men naturally are curious beings, right? So being able to then ask more questions, like, how did that feel? Like, I'm sorry, like, tell me more. How do you feel about that? And taking away any judgment of perceiving them as wrong, or I would have done it differently. I would have dealt with things different. I wouldn't be feeling as emotional. Of course you wouldn't, because you are who you are and she is who she is. So then it can be easier to be in that person's shoes and body.
Yeah, it's powerful. And it's so much of what you're sharing is about who you are as a person. Like,
everything.
It's how you deal with yourself and your own emotions, and it affects how you relate to others.
Yes.
And the patience you have for others, because if you're not patient with yourself, how can you be patient with someone else, right?
Yes.
And so I love that you're sharing all of these tips and strategies for people. So I had a quote. So the question I ask every guest at the end of every interview is, what is the meaning of life in your own words?
Whatever you want it to mean.
Yeah, that's a good answer, yeah.
Yes. That is the answer, I feel, because I don't have the answer, but what do you want it to mean? Do you want it to mean that it's an adventure? Awesome. Do you want it to mean that you're here because it's a simulation and there's someone else who has this as a program and you're in a computer? Then awesome. You want it to believe that you go out to heaven after this? Awesome. What I believe, though, is that, I don't know, mine changes all the time. You know, I love to have conversations about this where I like to question, like, we just watched The Matrix 3 days ago.
Oh, nice.
And then afterwards I was like, man, is this a simulation? You know? But then there's other times where I believe that, you know, this is, I'm just a soul here for a temporary experience, and then I might come back here. So I have absolutely no idea. I don't know, but I do believe that me being here, I'm just here to experience joy and make my life as great as I can make it, to explore what's possible, to feel emotional freedom, and to create connection.
That's beautiful. And what's next for you in the life of Matt Cama?
What is next for me? Well, the truthful answer is I don't know, because you know, I have no idea of what's coming in the future. But what I would love for it to be is, you know, I have different programs that I'm working on. I'm going to be doing a lot more podcasts as well, because I just said no to a lot of podcasts this year, and I really love it getting on podcasts now. Starting to say yes to a lot more, and also, just to continue to create content. I've been saying no to a lot more things, like, for example, business coaching next year, to create space for my creativity. So one thing that sparks joy for me the most is when I'm in front of my phone and I'm just like creating skits, or I'm creating content that really impacts people through awareness of their own patterns, through funny skits. You know, I feel like it's a big form of healing when I can make a funny skit and then someone's like, oh, they're laughing, but like, oh shit, I do that. You know, like, that's part of healing, is self-awareness. So bringing awareness to someone's patterns through skits, creating educational content on YouTube, that's next as well. And just making my programs for relationships the best and most impactful that I can make it.
Yeah, and you're doing the work every day on yourself. You know, I see you hiring coaches, and you're continually honing your craft.
Always.
And I can tell the fruits of that labor is who you are today. And I can tell, like, ever since I met you, I think a couple of years ago, I think I bumped into you once. No, I met you I was at Crate Cafe. That's right.
I remember that. You were with Dane.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow.
That was a few years ago now.
Yeah. It's where, didn't we message before that or something? Then I saw you. Oh no, I think
Yeah,
Dane,
I had bumped into you before that.
Yeah, yeah.
I believe. Yeah, and then I met you again there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a few years ago, and
Wow.
even since then, like I didn't know you that well, but I'd heard about you and seen you online, and just been following you ever since, and I've seen the growth as well.
Thank you.
So yeah, it's testament to how much you're putting in so much work into yourself, and like your relationship, you're putting in so much work into that. You're doing monthly, consistent relationship check-ins,
Yes.
and that's a lot of effort that you're showing up consistently in your relationship, which is probably why it's such a healthy relationship.
Absolutely.
You know, because you're watering your grass all the time.
Yes.
You know.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's a big part of it. Putting attention and intention into the relationship rather than just thinking it should just grow naturally. You know, it takes work.
Yes, exactly. And that's the hard reality of it, right? Like,
Yeah.
for our dream relationship, it's going to take work, and we're going to have to keep showing up.
Yes.
And every day is a chance to pour into our partner, and vice versa. We're going to receive and give, and it's a give and take.
Yes.
It's not just I'm going to give you so much and then expect something back. It's communication is key in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with the guests? I mean, not the guests, the viewers.
Yeah,
listeners?
you can just, if anyone wants to know more about my work, just go to mattcama.com, CAMA, 2 T's in Matt. And you can just check out all my other stuff there. And thanks for having me on. It's been this has been my favorite interview. No disrespect to anyone else, but I just love the questions that you ask, because it brings out even more in me and like my answers. So I've been I really love this interview.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. And guys, check out Matt Cama, and I'll see you on the next one.